And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. Of course, the Finest Unfiltered. It's Friday roundtable. Good morning to everyone. So Marlon will be jumping on in a minute. He's just doing his makeup right now. So I'll be jumping on in a moment. So John, good morning. New York City is the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to content. Unfortunately and sadly, it's also the tourist capital of the world. So I often say, if you watch this show, if you're one of our friends and listeners, I often say it, and I really believe that. There are two benchmarkers and two indicators of what's going on with the state of the city. And to me, that's Times Square and also Central Park. And when you see a rash of crimes in those two locations, to me, that's a major indication of what is actually going on in New York City. That is a legitimate picture. Because for most people, if you just go by crime stats, might not give you an actual picture, especially since we know that the residents in New York City and the tourists are being gaslit by the upper echelon, the NYPD, and the politicians. Now, with that being said, why do I say Times Square and Central Park? Because those are two key locations for tourists, especially Times Square, to me, is the front door for the the most iconic tourist location in the entire world. And that's Times Square. And if crime is out of control in Times Square, what pictures does that draw out to people? For one, that tells tourists one question. That's their one question. Is New York City safe enough to travel to? Is that a place we want to go to? So ultimately, that trickles down to all facets in New York City. That hurts economics. That hurts the people that actually live there. That hurts the businesses. That hurts all around. So this is a major problem. One also indication is manpower is definitely diminished. And they can't lie about their numbers, because if you can't put a presence, a large force in Times Square to prevent incidents like this, then we have a major problem. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be a law enforcement guru to know that you have to have a large presence in Times Square. Why? I've been to third world countries. I've been to places throughout this entire country where it's heavy on crime. But when there's tourist locations, those particular locations are highly protected, because why? You're protecting the bank. You're protecting the economics of that place also. So John, Marlon, good morning. Let's jump into this. I think this is really important to talk about. John, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Marlon was scheduled to be late today, so this wasn't this isn't a time-taking thing or anything like that. He doesn't owe any time up front. We carried him on the roll call for the few minutes. We knew,
Marlon was doing his makeup, right, Marlon?
So, yeah, man. I mean, look. The funny thing is, I was looking at Manhattan South crime statistics, and they're down. And I'm just laughing my ass off, and I'm like, you have all of these pivotal, like, assaults, shootings, stabbings, train pushes occurring multiple times a day, and yet you look at the reports and everything's down. And it's like, I don't think everything's down. So I was recently in Times Square, and I took my daughter to a play, so I had to pass over through Times Square because they had a few avenues shut down for all the FIFA events. And then I think it was the Dyke Parade too that they had the day prior to the gay parade. And I had to pee really bad. So like we were in the car, it took forever to get in there. Then I had to find parking, get parking, and then I'm like, I gotta stop in the Starbucks. So I go stop in the Starbucks. Person's in front of me. There's a big Puerto Rican guy behind me. And he's like, bro, you from here? And I was like, oh, no, not anymore. I said, but I live in New York City like my whole life. He's like, this place is crazy. And I'm like, why is it crazy? He's like, bro, I'm walking in Times Square. There was like 5 fights, 5 fist fights, full blown fist fights. And I'm like, where are you from? He's like, Indiana. And I was like, oh, you came in for the games or whatever? He's like, no, I'm staying in Philly. I was staying in Fishtown. I was like, well, it's not any better over there. And and he goes, yeah, no, I know. He goes, but I'm not used to this. This is crazy. And I was like, it's the middle of the day. There's a million people around. You'll be fine. And I was like, no. I went, I peed, I left. I was like, have fun. His wife came. I was like, have fun in New York City. We left. We go on our way. We go to the show. But I'm like, when people are coming in and that's their experience, that like, oh, I'm walking in the middle of the day in Times Square. There's thousands of people around. There's fights everywhere. There is like a lawless feel there. And the numbers, you could paint numbers however you want them. You know, you can make the statistics tell you that everything's fine. You can make the statistics tell you that everything's a nightmare. But when people are coming in consistently and they don't feel safe because they're not safe, it's going to harm tourism. It's definitely going to harm tourism. You know, there was a viral video that came out, that Viral News, Leroy Press, he put out, that occurred this past Friday. And I mean, I think it's horrific when you watch it, man. When you watch it, and I think, you know, whatever the numbers say, and when we talk about crime or when we talk about manpower, when you watch that video, it's going to tell you a lot different tale. It's going to definitely spell out that there's not as many cops in the NYPD as that claims to be. And you're going to see that actually Times Square isn't as safe as the NYPD claims it is, you know? So what's up, Marlon? What's going down, bro?
Yo, good morning, guys. Morning, chat. Happy Friday, everyone. Yeah. So we kind of touched on this not too long ago in another episode. I remember we put up a excerpt about it on YouTube, but when we talked about it, we mentioned that Times Square makes up a good percentage of the NYC's total economic output, and of the economic output, despite being such a small location, right? So that information comes from the Times Square Alliance, by the way. So here's the portion of it. It says contributes 15% of New York City's economic output and 10% of its jobs, despite just being 0.1% of the city's total land area. So, you know, it's a small location, but it's you know, a sizable part of New York City's economy, right? And you would think with that the city would take it very seriously. But again, we're seeing all these incidents come up in Times Square. You know, there was a shooting there. I think there was 2 of them during the, you know, post Knicks celebrations. And here we are with another incident that could again affect the tourism revenue that comes up with it. So as we said on that show, I don't know what it's going to take for the city to really get serious about that. And like, I don't know, just, you know, redevelop its plans for public safety there, or you know, just get some more competent, maybe some cops with more time on, you know, instead of rookies. But again, if this keeps happening there, it's going to affect the perception of safety there, and you're going to get less revenue coming in from less tourism going to that area, and that's not good for anybody.
Well, that's interesting, right, Marlon? So you mentioned let's get some veteran cops out there, and which they don't even exist anymore. So it's nearly 50% of the job is less than 5 years on the job as we speak. So their entire tenure has been under Eric Dym and Zohran Mamdani. So are they actually learning how to do actual police work? And even with that being said, so you have to ask yourself this: if we're getting such substantial crimes in broad daylight in Times Square, the most iconic, symbolic tourist location in the entire world, not just New York City, not for the US, but for the entire world. The entire world, people have put Times Square on their bucket list. There's people from all over the globe that to go to Times Square is on their bucket list before they die. So you have to ask yourself, if we're having crimes in broad daylight in Times Square, what's it like in other neighborhoods right now? What's it like in the 7-5 in East New York in broad daylight? What's it like in the South Bronx right now in broad daylight? I can tell you, it's a disaster. It's a shit show. I see it on social media all the time. People doing walkthroughs on 143rd Street, 3rd Avenue in the Bronx. It looks like a third world country. It was always been a rough place, but right now it just looks like unrecognizable. It doesn't even look like the U.S. Then you see spots of the East New York, just particular areas that are known to be rough neighborhoods are even far worse right now, right? If we're having, and that's why I say it's a major indication the state of the city. You don't need the numbers right now. We don't need Jessica Tisch to get on a podium right now and tell you how there's historic lows. Your eyes don't play tricks on you. You see what's going on. When there are crimes in Times Square in the middle of the day, and the strides that former Mayor Giuliani and the cops of the NYPD, the work that they did at the infancy of the ComStat era to bring Times Square back from the decimate that it was, to bring it to a place that was almost Disneyland, to go almost back in time full circle is absolutely disgusting. The hard work that the cops did on the former Mayor Giuliani, it's done for. So yes, that is a major indication. Again, I say those benchmarks is Central Park in Times Square. And you have to think about it. Anyone who likes to travel, I love to travel. If you go to Mexico right now, dangerous place, right? Cartels all over. But if you go to key locations where people go as tourists, pretty much you're going to be safe. Even same thing, Dominican Republic. I've been to many places where people, these are rough spots. But when you go to key locations where tourists go, or Caribbean islands, those areas are protected. The police presence in those areas is significant. Why? Because they don't want the economy to be hurt in those locations. They depend on tourism. Well, same thing for those businesses around Times Square. They depend on tourism also. And so, I say this. What are people saying outside New York? Should I visit New York City? Is it safe? Well, when you see that crimes are all over, especially in Times Square, where is the tourist visiting? You think they're going to East New York? Are they going to the South Bronx? Probably not. Are they going to various parts of Queens? Are they going to Staten Island? No, they're going to Times Square. And so if Times Square is not a place that's safe, they're not going to New York City.
Yeah, I agree, unfortunately, and I think that's what like really gets missed in all of this is it is like Marlon just showed, it's almost 15% of New York City's economy. I mean, the way that Rudy Giuliani brought Times Square back was he flooded Times Square with cops. And guess what they did? They did this horrible racist practice called broken windows where they enforced minor crimes. And then guess what happened? Major crime stopped and minor crime stopped. And then you were safe to walk around there 24/7 because people didn't feel free to do whatever they wanted. Right. And so, Bloomberg came in, he served 3 terms after Giuliani's 2 terms, and Times Square just kept getting better. And then a little guy, a big doofy guy named Bill de Blasio took over as the mayor, and the NYPD gave the whole policing minor crimes doesn't keep us safe. We're just going to police the major crimes. And I literally had police executives telling me, no, he's not saying that we're not going to police. We're going to police major crimes. I was like, explain to me how you police major crimes besides showing up when someone's dead, stabbed, beaten, robbed, and then investigating it and then trying to lock those people up. Explain that to me. How does that work? And because that's exactly what it is. We're going to stop policing, and you could go back to those years. Like I was still doing anti-crime when he came in. And I literally said to all my guys, I said, go long-term investigative. They're gonna route any form of proactive policing. Anyone that does proactive policing, they're coming after you. Like they don't want it anymore. They're literally telling you, the mayor's telling you, the police commission is telling you, the chief of department's telling you, we know that policing, we know that locking people up for smoking marijuana doesn't make us safe. I'm like, I don't know that. I actually know that it does. I actually know it stops a lot of crime and it deters a lot of crime. And so now here you are, you're in the center of the world. You're in Times Square, you're a tourist, and you're an elderly man and you're there with your family, and your family is going to watch you get assaulted by a pack of feral youth while Times Square security's standing there. Look, security guard to the right, security guard to the right. So there's 2 security guards there, and there's a pack of wild animals attacking this elderly man. Watch this video. So you could see there's 5 people around him punching and kicking. Now there's 6, and they're continuing to step on him. The one kid comes over just to feel his pockets. And look at this kid. Look, still talking smack to him. The security guards are just standing. Look how far back they are. They're nowhere. They're not calling for help. They're not on the phone calling 911. They're not yelling. They're not doing anything. I mean, honestly, it's unforgivable, dude. It really is. And this is supposedly the city that never sleeps. And this is Friday night. This is peak hours in Times Square, like tourists all over the place. You know, you want them to come in, you want them to feel safe, you want them to shop, you want them to have fun, you want them to drink. And look at this. Right in the middle of the street. Boom. It keeps going on and it keeps going on and it keeps going on. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know what it's going to take to put proper manpower in Times Square, but I think, like, you know, you're sending all of these investigative units, you're taking all these guys that are in federal units, all these detectives that are in special victims, that are in homicide, that are in detective squads, that are trained in investigating cases, and you're sending them all over the city, but you're not going to put them in an area that is responsible for 10% of New York City's economy. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, I honestly, I've been saying it for a while. I don't believe the deployment of the NYPD is competent at this point. I just don't. And I think the people that are leading it have no idea what they're doing. And it's just, I mean, and this is just a clear example of it. I guarantee there were not dozens, there were hundreds of NYPD detectives taken out of their assignment that Friday night, and they were everywhere else but in Times Square. Because, hey, you know, fudging numbers doesn't have any effect, right? It's just everybody's done it. Well, no, it actually does, because this is what happened. When you tell everybody it's safe, then you don't need to deploy cops there. And then what happens? Everybody suffers as a result of it. The business suffers, the citizens suffer, and you as a police officer suffer. So again, I'm going to say it again. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Anyone that is going to lie on a crime report to dumb down a number for this mayor, for Eric Adams, for Bill de Blasio, or for any of these other lying politicians, self-serving politicians, you deserve jail. You do. You deserve jail time.
Yeah. Well, those security guard over there are how really effective are they? Are they just to really shoo away the homeless EDPs that are hanging out in the area? Because I I wouldn't count on the security over there to do anything about the gangs. Especially since we've seen incidents of where people who tried to help themselves get injured, like this guy, apparently, this tourist. Yeah. But yeah, this is a big problem, and I think it's not covered enough by the news media, and it really should, because you see all the businesses in that area, the restaurants, the Broadway is in that area, and we're not talking like small businesses. We're talking restaurants that are very expensive to purchase a meal at. The average price of a Broadway show is not. It's not like the old days where you could get a cheap $20 ticket at the last minute. Those days are over.
Just spending at least $1,000 just to go. If you want good seats, at least $1,000. And then if you're gonna eat there, and then if you're gonna walk around and shop, it could be a $1,500 night for you, easy. Like, easy without getting extravagant. I'm talking about just basic.
Yeah. We're not even talking about like the cost of a hotel room in that area too. So I think this is a serious issue, and it should be talked about. No, I was looking up some of the numbers of the tourists that have been coming to that area, right? So we had 66 million in 2019, and then of course during the pandemic the numbers went down to 22, and now they're back up to 65 million supposedly. I question those numbers, but they're saying it's 65 million. But the thing is, think of it. 2019, in another two more years, 2019 will be 10 years, and in the span of 10 years we're just getting back to those same numbers as 2019, which isn't exactly an accomplishment. So with that said, now we have these ongoing issues, and the perception is already that the New York City subway is like a dangerous place. So on top of that, you have all these recent incidents happening there. And I think that's a recipe for some, a long-term recipe for New York City to no longer be that tourist attraction, that tourist destination that we were, you know. And I do think that like I said before, and Eric said also, that they do need a more thorough public safety plan over there that includes other specialized units besides rookies on a foot post, or like maybe a mobile field force every now and then. A mobile field force who doesn't normally work in that area, and they don't know exactly all the trouble hotspots in that area, and they probably don't even have a complete intelligence briefing about who the troublemakers there and what they're possibly expecting to happen that night. So I do think they need a more thorough public safety initiative over there.
Well, there's a couple of flashpoints here, but the first thing is this. So I'm a firm believer. What you do need in Times Square is what former Commissioner Dermot Shea gave away, and that's anti-crime. You need a police presence there. Don't get me wrong. It's important to have a police presence, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Times Square that is very subliminal, right? For instance, people walking around. There's huge groups. You know, I did a lot of details in Times Square where they have their Times Square initiative. I don't know if they still operate in the same manner, but there's a lot of seedy stuff going on in Times Square. Now, Times Square itself, what happens is you have subliminal stuff happening, and you have little groups where, you know, hand out CDs to people. And what they do is they confront these people at Times Square itself, right, in the vicinity of 42nd Street and 7th, 8th Avenue. But they take people off the block, off to the side, you know, close to 9th Avenue, away from the action. And that's where a lot of stuff happens. And you really need anti-crime, because it's really important to have a large presence in Times Square itself. And what that does, it displaces a lot of the stuff and moves it. And that's why it's important you have anti-crime out there to see what's going on. See those guys that are handing out CDs to tourists, because I see numerous interactions where they hand the CDs to tourists. And unfortunately, like John, you spoke to the tourists in Indiana, maybe unfamiliar to a dense population, unfamiliar to people actually, you know, handing them things and not realizing they put themselves in a vulnerable situation, you know, kind of being naive to it. And we've seen a lot of that in Times Square. And then you have these groups that kind of, without grabbing them, kind of like push them off to the side. And then you see them start to get aggressive, and they want money for taking those CDs. So there's a lot of that happening. And really what you need is anti-crime to pick these things off. You need intrusive police work. Now, I say this often. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My friends and listeners, you often hear me say this. There's a big distinction between security guards and law enforcement. And it's that shield that gives you the right to be intrusive, right? Under the case of People versus the Board. But these security guards, their job is just to observe, report, and repeat. That's it. So it's very important. So for anyone that wants to defund the police or is anti-law enforcement, gives a lot of rhetoric out there, it's the intrusive police work that actually prevents those crimes from happening. And anti-crime, I think, would be the number one solution to that area. Yes, you need a heavy presence, but you need anti-crime out there with those observational key elements, and to find those behavioral indicators that cause crime in Times Square. The other thing to talk about is then and now, the comparisons to Times Square. So when Times Square was a seedy, disgusting eyesore, it was a place of, you know, a hot, open market of prostitution. It was a drug market. It was, you know, had a very obscure appearance to it, right? It was known as the Deuce. Now, I think there was tourists going to Times Square, but much different than now. Not families going there. A lot of people went there because, you know, it was a place of fun, almost like an open market of prostitution for some people that want to go there, or just to see, you know, just almost like a fantasy land. It was like a fantasy world, but was met with a lot of crime. And I think the difference between now is you're seeing a lot of crime, but it's kind of like a facade and a mirage, because it still looks beautiful. The lights are on. It looks like it's Disneyland, but you're seeing a lot of crime going on, and violent crime. So I think a lot of tourists are misled. They go into Times Square. It still looks like Disneyland, but there's a lot of crime going on. And so as these crimes become public, it's not just spoken about in New York City. Believe me, when there's a crime in New York City that's happening in broad daylight, this is something that people talk about all over the world. So it's a major problem for New York City, major problem for tourism. So I think those are key flashpoints. One, bring back anti-crime. Obviously, we need cops to be trained to do that. And two, we have to recognize the then and now and the comparisons. That Times Square is a place, I think it's actually worse now because it's much more vulnerable for families, for elderly tourists, people that feel safe, because anyone and everyone goes to Times Square, unlike before, where I think that there was certain type of people that went to Times Square in comparison till now.
You know, there's another thing, and you know, I hate to do it because there's so many good cops out there. Like, there's still a lot of good cops out there, but there's just some really awful cops out there, and I don't blame them as individuals. I think the NYPD has really failed putting a real clear mission in cops' head. You know, Eric, you always talk about the distinction between like a cop and a security guard, right? Like, oh, you know, cop, you're meant to be intrusive. But today, like in New York, in the NYPD, I don't see in the authority, in the powers that they have, there's a clear distinction. In the way they move, the majority of them, there is no difference between them. What's the difference? I mean, we've seen cops act very similar to what you saw from those security guards, like literally frozen, don't know what to do.
Spot on, well said.
And I think, you know, that plays big into public safety. It plays big into the omnipresence. It plays big into perpetrators feeling that they can move freely without worried about being arrested, being confronted, spending an evening in jail. We've talked about it before, like how allowing people, basically everyone that gets arrested, nearly almost everyone that gets arrested, to not have to spend a night in central booking. I think that emboldens people even more because they don't care. I go to the precinct for a few hours. It's a joke. My friends show up. We all get out and we go out after and we act like jerk offs after, you know, and I think that played, like, those two things, I think, play into it a lot. I mean, we put this show together last night. I probably put this together at like 8 o'clock. And then, you know, a few hours after that, Viral News puts this one out that a guy he's taking the subway 40th and 7 right outside of Times Square. He gets slashed right across his chest for absolutely no reason. You know, some maniac comes over him, and it's like, you know, again, it's right in the heart of New York City. I mean, it's literally right in the heart of New York City. If we're not keeping this area safe, how are we keeping any other area? You know, we got pulled down about a month ago when we showed, actually a couple of months ago, like maybe 3 months ago, we got pulled down because we showed a kid walking through Times Square what looked like he had an assault rifle, like an AK-47. Like, he just walked free and clear, like he had no fear, no nothing. And then eventually somebody like flags these cops down and like, yo, this guy's just walking around where it looks like he's going to kill people. And so they stop him. They touch the gun with, like, they have like salad tongs. Like, they don't want to even touch the kid. They, you know, they don't want to toss him. They don't want to make sure it's safe. They don't want to make sure nothing. The kid feels the gun and it doesn't feel like a gun to him. So he gives it right back to the guy and he walks away. And I'm like, that was the worst piece of police work I've ever seen in my life. And then we got charged with, like, that we were showing, like, guns on the air. And I'm like, that, like, us on the stream, like, us were playing with guns on the air like gangbangers. And we appealed it. Like, no, we were just talking, showing, like, what's happening in Times Square, the crime rise in Times Square, how this, like, blasé attitude of the police, like, that they're just not there to enforce the law. They're not actually the police, and how that, like, that mindset is going to lead to worse things happening. And, you know, we lost that appeal too. So, I mean, that's why we try not to show any form of firearms on here, because obviously we got a lot of haters that just have nothing else better to do but report us all day long, including people at the highest levels of government in New York City, because they're absolute liars and they can't stand the truth getting out there. And I think it's that attitude that shows perpetrators that they could do absolutely anything and everything in Times Square. I mean, like, I don't look like I'm from anywhere else in the world. Like, everywhere I am in the world, everywhere I am in the country, I don't even have to open my mouth. You know, when I walk, people are like, what part of New York are you from? You know, as soon as I open my mouth, people are like, what the hell? You know, But in Times Square, in Times Square and all over Manhattan and even down by the ferry, what I noticed this summer is we have all these people from other countries coming in here, and they can't even they don't even know what a real New Yorker is. They have no idea. So like I'm walking up to the ferry and guys are like, "Yo, when are you checking in for your boat?" I'm like, "Bro, get the fuck out of here." And they're like, "Oh," and then they walk away. I'm like, I have the fucking Brooklyn Bridge and the Twin Towers tattooed on my arm. Like fucking blatant. Like I walk like I'm from New York. I look like I'm from New York. There's no way that any like New York based perpetrator would approach me thinking I'm a tourist. But we have imported the third world into this country. And then the same was true when we're walking through Times Square. Yo, do you want a picture? I'm like, does it look like I want a fucking picture? No, get the fuck out of here. Like, you know, and I was like, wow. I was like, this city is significantly changed since COVID. Like the influx of illegals has had a large effect on Times Square. And so I would say the biggest factor, other than the progressive laws, other than emasculating the police department through legislation and through training them to be security guards, training them to be when they, you got to work. Anytime you hear a law enforcement agency saying they want guardians, they don't want warriors, what they're telling you is they don't want an effective police force. They want cops that are going to stand there with their hand in their pocket. That's what they want. Like, and that's what the NYPD has done. They've deep-throated the diversity, equity, inclusion. They're continuing to do it. They're continuing to go down this route where they do not want a masculine stance from the NYPD. They want a feminine stance from them. They want a motherly stance from them instead of a fatherly one. And I think things will continue to get worse. They're just going to continue to get worse. But, I mean, significant changes start when de Blasio comes in about 2019, when all the progressive changes. Manhattan South goes from a cupcake command to boom, overnight it's in a house in the NYPD, meaning that, you're getting major level, high level crime, stabbings, murders, robberies, all street crime, right? Just changes almost overnight in 2019. And now post COVID, when you have this influx of illegals, now it's gang territory, but it's not even New York gangs. It's Trinitarios. It's gangs that are from the third world. And all of this is have a lasting effect on top of there's not enough police there. And yet everyone, I don't care how many news reports come out, and not a lot of them come out because the two I just showed you're not going to read about in mainstream legacy media. You will not read about, you will not hear about them. When they do come out, however, it'll always be with, oh, but crime's at historic lows. Oh, but shootings and murders are at historic lows, because everyone has a vested interest. Everyone has a vested interest in protecting the legacy of Jessica Tisch's reign as police commissioner. And I honestly, I can't take it anymore. It's like disgusting to hear. It's disgusting to watch. I've lost respect. I literally had no respect for so many people, but like, anyone that I have for, I just continue to start losing respect for, because everyone has just showed they have to be tied to the political structure of New York City and to law enforcement, and they will never speak up against a billionaire or anyone that they think could get them a contract or get them back into the profession. And it's disgusting to me. It honestly is.
Yeah. Just on that note about contracts also, one of the other things that's happening in the city is their continuous obsession with technology, and technology as a replacement for police, right? And I think this is another example of where technology fails and why you actually need physical human cops, competent physical human cops standing, walking footposts, patrolling the area, and doing the job that we were trained to do, right? So what I'm bringing up on the screen now is Amnesty International's heat map. They call it their surveillance heat map. Let me try and get it up. And this is a heat map of surveillance cameras throughout New York City, right? You notice, look at Manhattan, right? You see where it's really white hot. That is, of course, that's a financial area. the financial district, Lower Manhattan, Wall Street, and so on. But now you're gonna look a little further north, and what we're looking at here is Times Square, right? Let's zoom in a little bit. Times Square and Midtown, right? See that corridor over here? That should be 7th Avenue and Broadway over here. And you can see that there are tons of cameras over there, right? Tons of cameras. And if we go to their other, this is another image from their website. These are all some of the security cameras there. Now, it's not all, because keep in mind, the police department's also in partnership with a lot of private companies that use security that feed us the footage. So I'm bringing this up because think how many cameras are over there, and yet these incidents keep happening. It's like this shows you again that no matter how much tech you have there, how much cameras, right, you still need the human beings to actually patrol that area. Okay, because how many incidents keep happening there, regardless of the fact that that entire area is peppered with cameras, right? And yet, again, keep in mind now, why I'm also bringing this up is because the city has brought up drones themselves, and we know they're obsessed with drones. And just because CAS ain't there anymore, it doesn't mean they aren't. Trust me, they're obsessed with drones, and more drones are coming. But again, you need human beings, because as you can see from this picture, all these cameras are there, and yet you're still having all these incidents there, right? So the technology is always a great tool, but it's not a replacement for competent, experienced police officers, which is what they need in that area badly.
That's a great key point. So I'm really into this. So when it comes to AI, I often say there's most professions are going to be eradicated, but there are some professions that just can't go away. So I often tell young people right now, you want to become a millionaire, become a plumber, do HVAC, become an electrician, because no matter how many jobs get eradicated by AI, whether it's CPA, doctors, medical assistants, plumbers, HVAC, electrical trades, they're not going away. But the same token, when it comes to law enforcement and military, you still need boots on the ground. I don't care how many drones we have overseas, but to actually turn the agenda, especially when it comes to politics and foreign politics, for instance, Iran or something like that. Unfortunately, I've had this conversation with someone yesterday. Oh, well, you have drones over there and all the technology. No matter what, in combat, and if there is going to be full combat, you need boots on the ground. And it's unfortunate because that means lives will be lost. Same thing goes for law enforcement. No matter how much AI technology there is, you still need boots on the ground. Why? Because that heat map that Marlon just showed you, I think is fantastic. But what it doesn't show you a potential perpetrator walking, a particular gait. And when I say gait, his walk or her walk, to identify behavioral indicators that they may be about to commit a crime, that they may be a predator, or maybe they're actually someone who may be a victim, right? A lot of anti-crime work and special operations work is not only identifying potential perpetrators, but it's also having the skills to identify who's a potential victim. So to pay focus on that as well. So no matter how much AI, when it comes to military, and especially law enforcement, we're talking about right now, and we're talking about Times Square, you need boots on the ground. There's no doubt about it. Because what also that heat map doesn't show you, it doesn't show you facial features. It doesn't show you facial expressions, emotions, right? And AI doesn't recognize emotions that may be behavioral indicators and observational indications that a crime is about to be committed. So ultimately, that's why I'm saying, I know the upper echelon of the NYPD, you watch this, and as you watch it right now, it's very easy to solve the issue in Times Square. And if I was police commissioner right now, I'd flood a uniform presence in Times Square, and that enough would deter some crime, but I would also then flood the area with anti-crime, because anti-crime will identify who the repeat offenders are and start addressing the issues with violent robberies, gangs, and that uniform presence is good, but it's not enough, because a uniform presence, if it's enough,
I'll be back, fellas. Sorry. I'll be back. Sorry.
Do your thing, brother.
Yeah.
But that uniform presence is going to displace that crime and push it outside the actual hyper-focus point of Times Square. which is the outside blocks, right? 9th Avenue up to like 45th Street. Same thing, 10th Avenue, the other side, 5th Avenue. So anti-crime is really important to identify those issues, working in conjunction with a good uniform presence. And I think that would solve it right away. That's a key element. Bring back anti-crime, bring back a uniform presence, and you'll shut that down in a week, or maybe even less, because those anti-crime guys are going to be out there like rabid dogs. They're going to find out who the violent repeat offenders are in that area, who's actually committing the crime, where they're coming from, because we know damn well most of those perpetrators, they come from outside boroughs, right? They come from the Bronx, they come from Staten Island, they come from Queens. They're not coming from that specific area. They're coming there to get a payday, and they're going back.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I know they're sending a lot of rookies to the Bronx, especially South Bronx, because that, Bronx is kind of out of hand, But with that said, I think you really do have to, clamp down on all the nonsense happening in Midtown, because again, it affects the money. And I know like a lot of the precincts in the outer boroughs are very short of cops right now. But the problem here is that if the money is affected in Times Square, that money is going to, that's a loss of funds for everybody in the city. So again, there needs to be like a real concentration on Midtown and protecting that area. And I just showed you this picture here of some of the costs involved with all these security cameras, right? And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of billion, a lot of money, right? And what also have we spoken about on this show? That the city is short of money, short of revenue, right? So with all this money being spent, what's the return on investment when these incidents keep happening over there? Why are we sinking billions of dollars continuously into all of these things when you would think the security cameras would be able to pick up stuff, and then there would be some quick reactionary force or something like that that responds to it. I'm just saying that I just want to know what's the return on investment if we're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars on these security cameras, and yet these incidents keep happening. Now, keep in mind, Detective Islam, who died last year, he died not too far from there, because the Blackstone building is on Park Avenue, 345 Park Avenue. I believe it's in the 40s also, so it's not too far around it, maybe 10 minutes. So, and what did we talk about after he passed away? That there was a man walking a couple blocks with a long gun in his hand, and again, that area had numerous cameras in it. So, if we're spending all this money, I expect that those areas that are heavily peppered with security cameras to be some of the safest parts of the city. Otherwise, that money isn't being well spent, and they're not doing their job over there. Whoever's in charge of monitoring those cameras and thinking of a plan to effectively utilize those cameras in public safety.
So I think you bring up some great points, right? So after 9/11, the NYPD adapted a program called Lower Manhattan Security Initiative. So our friends and listeners that are part of the NYPD, active or retired, I'm sure you're fully aware of it. But anyone here watching Police Enthusiast. So after 9/11, you had the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative, which meant cops watching in real time, cameras in Lower Manhattan. I think it went from Canal Street to around Battery Park. Mm-hmm. And those cameras could literally see inside a woman's pocket bag. So these are impressive cameras. They're things you can see. But what do you need with those cameras? You need someone to man those cameras, and not just anybody. Here's the reality: you need good cops with a good eye to watch those cameras to look for behavioral indicators, right? Because as Marlon showed you earlier about heat sensors and indicators, that's great. But you need someone, you need real cops to sit there and watch and say, okay, who's a potential perpetrator? Who's a potential victim? What are you seeing? Because cops, and I don't say police officers, cops see things that others don't see, right? Now, what else happened? After the attempted bombing in Times Square, they then moved to what's called the Midtown Manhattan Security Initiative. So it's the same thing as the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative. They just expanded all the way into Midtown. So we have real-time cameras out there. So even with those real-time cameras, we're still getting crimes happening in broad daylight. Because who's watching these cameras? What are they looking for? Cameras are great. You know, it's great to have drones. It's great to have cameras. It's great to have all this technology. But technology is a support system to the actual cop using those elements, those observational skills. I say it all the time, right? It's a supplemental tool. Drones, technology, these are supplemental tools. Never going to replace your boots on the ground cop, right? That cop that sees things that others don't see. And that cop eye is so important. AI can't replace that cop eye. It's billions of dollars. So when we talk about Times Square is an economic powerhouse. There's more than 130, look it up if you get a chance. More than 130 million people pass through Times Square each year. And I'm talking about tourists. More than 130 million tourists each year. And it generates, I think it's about 58 to 60 billion dollars a year in tourist dollars. And it's about 2.5 billion in tax revenue. And so if there is a crime wave in Times Square, which there is, how does that affect the economic wheel of New York City? And it does. It has implications on the tax revenue, has implications on tourists. And so the reality is, will businesses stay there? And if those businesses in Times Square leave, that's a huge problem that affects and trickles down to the entire city. But we also have to ask, and this is what I said earlier in the episode, if that's the state of the city, Times Square, people get attacked in broad daylight, and the NYPD can't protect those tourists, which should be, they should protect those people like they're royalty. Why they're coming here? The NYPD should almost take it personally. If a tourist gets attacked, everyone should be pissed. If you attack a tourist, you're attacking the economic wheel of New York City. That's how I feel. If you attack a tourist, I mean, I'm not saying it's right, but there are third world countries. If you attack a tourist, I don't even know if you ever make it to the precinct. If you attack a tourist in Brazil, you attack a tourist in Dominican Republic or in Mexico, I don't think you even make it to the precinct. Now, I'm not saying that's how we do things in the U.S., but we should take it personal. Like, wow, a tourist actually got attacked. You're attacking the economy. You're attacking the tax revenues. You're putting these small businesses at risk, or any business here at risk of leaving. That's a major problem. There should be such a huge effort on keeping Times Square safe for those reasons, tax dollars. But then you have to say to yourself, wow, what trickles down to the rest of the city? Well, you see it. You see what goes on in Roosevelt Avenue. You have an open, right? That the market that you had in Times Square is now on Roosevelt Avenue in Queens. That hot open market of tourism, of prostitution, it's on Roosevelt. So all those issues that you had in Times Square, they're in New York City. They moved around. But now Times Square, the place that looks like Disneyland, which I say is a facade and a mirage, is just a terrible place because people are getting attacked. It looks great, right? It's almost like, you meet that woman who looks great, but meanwhile, she's just a total bitch. It's the same thing. What you see is much different from what you get.
Yeah. I saw some comments in the chat. I saw Boston Bob he said that Boston Bob 0007 says, Marlon, just wait until all auto manufacturers have cell access to all new vehicles at a time. Yeah, Boston Bob is speaking about the the cameras that are on a lot of these EVs. And that's going to become part of the conversation in a couple of years, Boston Bob, because the manufacturers have access to all of you and whatever you're doing daily, and soon police will too, because if we need it for if we need the evidence, if we need the camera footage for a crime that happened, you can best be sure that we're going to try and get it. But I think that speaks of the social contract that we have with that we as the public have with our government. We're being asked to surrender certain freedoms, right? And we're being asked to tolerate like cameras all over the place, right? monitoring everything we do. And yet, at the same time, in the same cities where these cameras are all over the place, we have crime skyrocketing here. Okay. So what are we getting in return for surrendering that freedom, that freedom of mobility? That's a question that's going to come up again, because we're only getting more cameras in all these new technologies. And by the way, the city, I've talked about this before, the city wants to put cameras on the buses, on the sanitation trucks. They want to put, there's proposals in a way to put cameras on parking meters next too. So they want cameras all over the place, but what are we getting in return for those cameras? Because it's certainly not public safety, The other thing I was gonna say is that
maybe private contracts,
again,
Marlon. That's probably what they get.
Well,
Private contracts. That's what they get.
Yeah, that's why I said it's not for you, the plebs. It's for the corporations and the billionaires. Yeah,
you're right.
And it's for the city to reap more tax revenue from you. Backdoor taxes in the form of fees. But it's most certainly not for your public safety. So whenever they tell us it's for our own safety, that's clear. That's bullshit. Okay.
Like Staten Guy 321. What's up, brother? Great friend of the podcast. He says, Marlon, there's cameras in the Verrazano Bridge now. I heard that. So I don't know if they're just catching jumpers, but what are they actually accomplishing there? That's a great point. They put all these cameras out, all them private contracts. And that's why I say, unless you have a human element behind those cameras, because the camera is the assistance. The camera is not it's not the point of contact.
Yeah.
What good are those cameras? It's like, I said, what's great, it's like we all know those women that go out and buy all these beautiful clothes, and then they go into their closet one day and they things they never wore before, they pick something. I mean, we all have that. My wife does it. I'm sure your wife does it. All we all know women who do it, right? They go to their closet and they're like, well, I got nothing to wear. And then they actually comb through it, and then there's a dress that still has a tag on. They never wore it. So what's the good? You bought it, it's just sitting there. It's the same thing with the cameras, just sitting there. What's the good? But I tell you what's a breath of fresh air. So just talk about police work a little bit. I see a lot of our friends and listeners here are real cops. I mean, Marlon, I want to know if you felt the same way. I felt the same way. A couple of our friends and listeners are saying it here. I almost took it personal. Like if I had a post, even though as a rookie, like I had a foot post, like, okay, it could have been the worst spot in the city. But that day, it was going to be Disneyland. Like that day, nothing's going to happen. And if something happened on your post, I don't know about you, I was almost like embarrassed. Like, it's like you failed. Like that's your job to protect that spot. I mean, I'm sure you've done it, Marlon. I did it. I used to, you joke around with the guys. That's what's sad about body cameras now. Joke around. Like there's a couple of, I'm sure you had as a rookie, I had it, right? A couple of guys that deal on corners. But yo, listen, I know this is your business. I don't really care. Do what you do. But today, not in this post. Go somewhere else. And they always respected that. And I'm sure other cops did the same thing. Like, listen, today, this is my spot. It's not happening. Even in a sector doing patrol, like things happen. Like, you almost feel like, damn, like, did I do something wrong? Because it's, it was almost like I felt like you're a manager of a store. I got to manage that store. And if someone breaks into that store, I fail. Like, what did I do here? So it's nice to see our friends and listeners are real cops. What are your thoughts? I'm just curious. Not to go totally off, but did you feel that way too? I almost took it personal.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I was a dictator on my post. You weren't hanging out on my corner. As a rookie, I had the corner of Bainbridge and Reed Avenue. In the 8-1. And I don't know how it is now, but back in the 2000s, that corner you're always getting someone shot. There's always something going on in there. So when they would give me that corner, I'm like, that BS ain't happening on my tour. I'm not dealing with that. So we had a couple of guys hanging out in a building next to it who I knew, I'm still a rookie, so I'm still getting a foothold of the job. But when I see these guys would hang out on the stoop, I knew this isn't this isn't a good sign. So these guys would go from the stoop to the corner store, and I wasn't having any of that, and they would meander in front of the corner store, and I wasn't having any of that. So I used to, I was all on those guys all the time until they actually graffitied inside the building on the wall. They were like, fuck the 8-1, fuck Officer Bethel. It actually had my name.
They put your name up. That's bragging rights, man.
Yeah, they actually put my name on it. They were like, fuck Bethel. And Di Moriello, Steve Moriello, he was the CEO at the time, right? And I actually think he kind of set the table over there, because that guy was crazy. He would go out there and stop like 10 guys at once, you know. Now I'm not so sure you could articulate stopping 10 guys at once,
Yeah.
but he would do it, you know. He would do it. And I think at that time the 8-1 was like, that 8-1 was a great place. I actually wanted to go to the 8-1, you know, from Brooklyn North Impact, but I ended up at the 7-7. You know, things work out, you know, for the best. But the 8-1 at that time was a good place to be, because those guys were like hard chargers, you know. So one day he did a stop at that building, and he saw that graffiti on the wall, and he was livid, you know. He was livid. So he like collared everybody in there, and then he had like the next day he had somebody come in, and I think it's city, or maybe it was the auxiliary guys or somebody. They came in and they painted the wall up. But that's when I actually discovered that they had graffitied my name on it, because when Moriello went in there with his driver, I went in after them, and that's when I saw. I was like, holy crap! I'm pretty proud of that, by the way. I still got a picture somewhere. I gotta find it.
No, that's what I'm saying, dude. That's bragging rights, man. And that means you were doing your job. Like, fuck Bethel. Like, that's bragging rights.
Yeah, but a different time though, you know. Back then, rookies were told like, you know, this is your foot post, and you know you got to hold it, lock it down. And I'm not so sure that's the case now, because first of all, you know, they've changed what you can actually summons guys for. Back then, you had a lot more leeway with you know, with things like disorderly conduct, which I would hit guys all the time for hanging out and just loitering in front of the store, because you couldn't give a loitering summons, you know, but you could give them discount, you know. So, but again, now the rules have all changed, and we've become a kindler, gentler department, and we tolerate a lot more crap that eventually devolves into bigger problems for us, like you see in Times Square. How many of those guys in Times Square are just loitering, hanging out in corners, and you know, aimlessly, and they're doing that aimlessly, and eventually that devolves into fights with rivals. It devolves into, you know, gang beefs and other things. So it's a different department now, and you see the results of it in things like Times Square.
Well, I think we agree. I think they're aimlessly but purposeful at the same time. So, as I said, you know, towards the end of my tenure in my career, when I really couldn't go out in the street, towards maybe the last 6 months, but they wouldn't put me on the street anymore in the South Bronx because of all the attacks I got from Civilian Complaint Review Board. I was just completely under attack. I was a target. It was said to me numerous times anyway. Oh, if this was a complaint, this would go nowhere, you know. But because it's you and CCRB has a target on you, the attorneys would say that straight out to me from the LBA, Lieutenant's Benevolent Association. Well, because it's you. But anyway, so I did a lot of time in Times Square this way, because that was the only opportunity I had to get overtime or just to be out there in the street. I love to be out there in the street. But when I was in Times Square, I saw it, and I saw the change, and I saw, obviously at that time, I retired in September 2022. So anti-crime was disbanded June 15, 2020. So by that time, we didn't have anti-crime anymore. So I saw the change in the way we policed. We weren't doing intrusive policing anymore. They had the Times Square initiative. The cops were out there in uniform, but it was just different. We didn't have a lot of cops that were doing intrusive police work. A lot of them, their whole entire career was under former Mayor Bill de Blasio. So it was more of this, you know, hug a tree type cops, unfortunately, your neighbor coordination officers. Some of them are great, but some of them just came from the former Mayor de Blasio's era and just weren't doing intrusive police work. And so you needed that anti-crime apparatus. And what I saw was there was a lot of people hanging around there what appeared to be aimlessly, but really was purposeful. They had a mission, and their mission was just to cause trouble. And there were just different groups. There were some people that loitered around that just had nothing to do to cause trouble. There were groups that were trying to hand people CDs and bring them off to the side. There were groups that were looking to do robberies. I saw them. And there were also, you could see rival gangs that would try to find places where they could settle beefs. And that was a key location. Also because it's a big money maker, right? A lot of those guys would go out there, do their dirt, and make a lot more money dealing in Times Square than they would in the South Bronx or I'm sure parts of the 8-1, same thing in Brooklyn. So Times Square is a hub. As I said, it's a powerhouse for economics, the economic wheel of the entire world. It is a most iconic tourist location. That's a place to make money. Not only is it a place for tourism, but it's also a place for perps if you allow it. And that's why I go back to that and say I saw uniformed cops, and not all of them, there's outliers, but I saw a lot of uniformed cops not take pride that this is my post. Like nothing's going to happen here. And we see it often. We see young cops today that don't have that same sentiment. And do I blame them? I don't, because they're not being taught. When we got on the job, those old timers grabbed us, man. I remember getting on the job January 2004. And the old timers that were on the job, they told you, listen, kid, you're on this post today, nothing happens here, right? Take care of business. And what did that mean back then? Back then, that was like, listen, that was your store. You managed it. You made sure that people were safe. You didn't embarrass yourself or embarrass the precinct. Nothing happened on that post. And we don't have that same ideology. And I don't blame these guys because they're not being taught. They're not being taught. And if we were still on the job and we tried to preach that or teach that, I believe we would get a talking to, and that would change quickly. I don't know what these cops are taught right now, but I feel sorry for them. It is embarrassing, though, if something happens right in front of your face and you don't address it, or you didn't stop it before it happened. You didn't see those indicators. It's a sad state of affairs. To me, it's not policing. It's going back to being a security guard. So I agree with John when John was on here before. John's gonna come out later, by the way. He's everything's good, by the way. Just taking care of some personal business. But what's interesting about that is John said a lot of them are operating as security guards, and I agree. And a security guard, that shield means to observe, report, repeat. And if you're a cop out there and that's the way you're operating, that's not police work. You're supposed to be intrusive. You're supposed to engage people, have conversations all day. You should be, your mouth, your jaw should be exhausted by the end of the day because you were talking to people, you were engaging them. That's what cops do.
Yeah. And back then, you'd also get screamed at by your boss if your boss drove around, or the CEO drove around and he saw some bullshit happening on your post, And one of the things we've talked about on here a lot is like all the young guys who stand around and wait to be told to do something, and that's something that you wouldn't see much of back in the days. Otherwise, you get screamed at, So you think of how many of those guys are hanging out in Times Square, just hanging out, bullshitting with no purpose, right? And these are on foot posts that are there because there are a lot of rookies over there on foot posts. And I saw a comment from Stay Trained Up. I think he asked if, here it is. He says, isn't there a unit assigned to Times Square? Yes, Stay Trained Up. There's there used to be the Times Square, I forgot the exact name of it, but it was specific to Times Square. But I believe those are all rookies and young cops again. But the point I'm making here is that, there are a lot of guys just loitering and hanging out with no purpose on those corners. And those corners are foot posts, that rookies have to walk. So why are they being able to do that? And there's no no oversight telling them, what are you doing letting these guys just hang out here? Why aren't you shooing them away and, or giving out some summons, Now, unfortunately, like I said before, there's less leeway for NYPD to give out summons now, we used to be able to literally write a summons for almost anything, and which, I'm not saying you should have, but that gave you a tool that you could use if you have no other options, right? And trust me, they come in handy, because I actually collared a guy for spitting once, right? In the 7-7, and I collared him for spitting and discount also, and the DA was and the paralegal at the DA's office was looking to drop it, and I told her, listen, the store owner gave me a complaint. He tells me he doesn't like this. These guys are scaring away his business, right? That we know the around the corner was had a drug condition, right, on Lincoln Place. So what else am I supposed to do? if the guy's complaining to me and he doesn't like these guys on the corner, what do you want me to do? Right? You don't like me giving him a column for spitting because he didn't have ID on him, so I couldn't give him the summons. But I'd already warned him earlier, get off the corner when I come back in. But the point is that you could have given guys a summons for anything, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it all the time. But it gives you a tool to use when you have no other options and you have conditions on your post that you need to clear. You need to do something about it, because again, there are people and businesses counting on you to do your job. Otherwise, they can't do their job. They're not making money. And if they're not making money, then they're going out of business. And as we said with Times Square, if Times Square isn't making money, and if it's not looked at as one of the safest parts of the city, tourists aren't coming there. That tourism revenue isn't coming in. That means the city's short of revenue. That means they're going to be looking more to you and more to pilfering your pension or delaying pension payments because they don't have that money. Or they're going to be looking to not hire additional cops, which means you are asked out when it comes to taking days off or getting a break from your multiple days of details and endless overtime. So there are repercussions for all of this, and this is why it's sad that we don't have a lot of these tools anymore, and there are repercussions for that, as well as repercussions for you leaving people hanging out on your post and not doing something about it. So.
Yeah, no, spot on. Leo, fear. I like this conversation, by the way, because now we're talking about real police. We talk about the news and trending and how it weaves into police work and politics, but just talk about what it is to be a cop. And it's always great to have these conversations. Leo Fearpenny, what's up, brother? Great friend to the podcast. He says, this is what the old timers would tell us, right? This doesn't happen anymore. One of the best pieces of advice I got as a rookie was that this foot post is your town, and you are the sheriff. You keep your town clean. How it is up to you, but it better be clean. Yeah, that's right, man. There really was a time, man, where people they took it personal. It was almost like competitive. I don't know if you found that too, Marlon. I remember it was kind of competitive too amongst various rookies on a football. It's like, you know what, like I'm holding this down. Did you, at the end of the day, it's like, what happened on your post? Well, what happened to my post? I held it down. And there was a sense of pride in that. And when we lost that. And that's why, I'm curious, Marlon, on your thoughts. So I'm a big advocate for anti-crime. Obviously, I always talk about intrusive police work. And being that you did Intel, I'm going to assume that you're a huge advocate for anti-crime because Intel works hand-to-hand with anti-crime. And I really do think that plan would be extremely effective. I mean, if anyone disagrees with me, if you have a different plan, better plan, or an idea, there's different ways to skin a cat. But I think a uniform presence in Times Square with anti-crime circling around like hyenas would really solve the problem. Because the anti-crime guys, their job would really be to delve into those complaint reports, find out what type of crimes are being reported, what time they're happening, and start to match those behavioral indicators. And what's more important, and this is where I thought we were extremely effective in anti-crime, is I would put a hyper focus on who are the potential victims. And that's what I would look for. I would always have, if I had two crime teams out there or a team, half that team would be focused on who's the potential perpetrators, and I would have half that team looking for potential victims. And or same thing, like let's say you have a beef going on. Obviously, I have part of the team addressing the crew that's the problem, and the other half addressing where the potential retaliation could be. And so you're stopping or preventing crime from happening. And I think, removing anti-crime was a huge problem. But the question is, with the cops that we have right now, could we make an effective anti-crime team?
Yeah. No, you can't. I think the problem with anti-crime now, and for those of you, for our civilians watching here, and those of us not on the job anymore, right? There's no more plainclothes anti-crime in precincts. Anti-crime were the plainclothes officers that you saw driving around for the most part, right? Because we know a lot of other units would from time to time be in plainclothes themselves, but for the most part, the anti-crime were the plainclothes officers you saw running around in the precincts with the maybe Giants jersey and some camo shorts, right? Or what's the other outfit? The Yankee jersey with some camo shorts as well, right? You know who they are, but
Gotta get
they'd
those
be the
jerseys
guys
on, bro.
driving around the unmarked, huh?
Gotta get those jerseys, man.
Yeah, but those were the guys who were driving around the unmarks, and they were, they were to concentrate on felonies and specifically firearms and robberies. Some of the heavier enforcement in the precinct. Those are no more. Now we have kind of have like a modified conditions, which is basically conditions used to be the guys in for the most part they would be in uniform, and their job would be to either cut you a summons or an arrest. But a lot of times while they're addressing specific conditions in the precinct, they would also get a gun or two or get some other serious crime. But the point is that there are no more specific anti-crime officers in the precinct. The precincts don't have plainclothes, so those cops wear a modified NYPD uniform that still, for the most part, looks like a uniform cop, right? And what we're talking about is that they need the plainclothes guys to blend into an area like Times Square. Now they have, I believe, the pickpocket unit works around there as well, but that's a much smaller detail. I think you need a dedicated precinct plainclothes unit, or maybe a dedicated unit from the borough, which for you civilians, the borough runs the precincts in a specific portion of the larger borough. So Manhattan has Manhattan North Borough, which runs Manhattan North precincts, and Manhattan South Borough, which runs Manhattan South precincts. So we need a dedicated unit of plainclothes guys there to blend into the crowd. I would think they need a dedicated conditions unit in the crowd, and maybe some plainclothes anti-crime guys in cars also driving around the area, and specifically the outer skirts of the area. Whereas you'd have like maybe another unit inside walking around amongst the crowd of tourists and visitors to that area. And you need that because, again, there's a lot of things that are happening on the ground level that you walking around in a uniform is not going to do it, because they see you walking from a block away, and they'll just turn a corner and walk a little bit east or west of that area, and when you're not there, they're gonna return to doing their bullshit. So they need a bigger package of public safety over there that includes also a detail in plainclothes.
You're absolutely right. Spot on. I think ultimately what plainclothes does, it gives you that intrusive police work apparatus, right? And people often say proactive police work or broken windows, and whatever perspective or whatever semantics you want to use is important. But what's important is that we're actually doing intrusive police work. Why do I call it intrusive? Because that's what intrusive is you're engaging people. That's the difference. To me, that's the dichotomy of that shield, like a security guard. You observe, report, and repeat. And that shield of police officer, I think, is so special, or a cop, is you're being intrusive. You're actually engaging people on all levels. Well, it's just a conversation. You see someone who's looking up in New York City, and they're looking up. What does that tell you? When you see people looking up, a good cop knows that's probably a tourist looking up, right? And that's, you want to ask someone, hey, what's going on? How you doing? Can I help you? Something like that, right? And that's what cops do. And it's intrusive on all levels. That doesn't mean necessarily looking for crime, but you're always engaging people. So I think that's extremely important. Listen, with that being said, I want to say we're an hour and 14 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate. Thank you so much for our friends and listeners. Let's turn for a moment. Let's get to our sponsor. I'm going to read this out here, please. So it's time for a message from our partners at Kalshi. The 2026 primaries are taking shape, and you can trade the biggest political races on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade major primaries, election outcomes, and the biggest political storylines as they happen. Will the Republican Party win the U.S. House? Right now, Republicans win the House is currently trading at 18%, meaning a $250 trade would pay out $1,313. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code FINEST to earn up to $500 when you trade $25. That's a pretty good deal. Kalshi, Kalshi, Kalshi. Trade on anything 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. So with that being said, please, if you haven't yet, use that code FINEST. Turn to Kalshi, turn to our sponsors. We appreciate it. Yeah, so Marlon, as we say, jumping back into it, I think anti-crime is huge. The removal of anti-crime. First of all, you know what's interesting about that? You go back to June 15, 2020, which was the death and funeral of anti-crime. Anti-crime was flying. Anti-crime was doing a good job. Anti-crime was picking off these perpetrators at different riots. And people weren't complaining about anti-crime. They were complaining about cops in uniform when it came to the BLM riots. But somehow we eradicated anti-crime. So I'm curious what real conversations went behind closed doors to get rid of that. Anyway, I just think it's, I think Times Square is fixable. And the fact that they haven't fixed it yet, you have to ask yourself, are they not fixing it because they don't have the capabilities? What are the limitations of the NYPD right now? We know the limitations on the manpower, but what are the other limitations? Or they just choose not to fix it? Because to me, it seems like an easy fix. I mean, I think Marlon, you or myself or John make us commissioner tomorrow. Some of our friends and listeners here, obviously, are real cops. Make us commissioner tomorrow, and I think within a week, Times Square is going to be fixed, or maybe less.
Yeah. You know what conversation was going on behind the scenes? It was about how effective anti-crime was, and it was too effective, so they had to get rid of it. It was too effective at locking up the people that it should have, that we should, the real real perps in a lot of these neighborhoods. Okay, the gun guys and the guys, the real troublemakers in these neighborhoods. It was too effective at doing that, so they had to get rid of it. Because remember, again, the goal is to close Rikers. The goal is less people getting locked up right now, so we could close Rikers and sell off the property for $12 billion. So anti-crime was too effective at its job. But something else I just thought of is that, again, what exactly do the borough chiefs do, right? Now we know that the CEOs
they're watching right now. Well, sorry, they're watching right now. That's what they do.
Yeah, I guess so. But we know CEOs are hamstrung by the lack of personnel, right? There's not enough cops to go around for every precinct, right? And the Bronx is getting the lion's share of those cops, right? So my question is, what are the borough CEOs doing about things like this? And when I see things like this going on, this was the guy who was in charge of Manhattan South, right? And when I see things like this, I have to wonder how serious these guys are, because if Midtown precincts are short of personnel, so they can't effectively police those areas, then that should be your priority as a chief, to figure out a way to get stuff done, right? But we've seen it time and time again. Incidents in certain precincts, like Roosevelt Avenue, which is a problem, like Pennsylvania Avenue, which is a problem. Those incidents keep happening, and when I see that, I'm thinking, what exactly is the borough chiefs doing? Because obviously those areas need cops, and they need a better, they need more attention and a better plan. But what is the borough chief getting called to the floor in CompStat about it? No. That CEO is going to get grilled, though, in CompStat.
Well, so here's a good question. This is something I've been thinking about also. And I'm sure we're all thinking the same thing, right? Because, I mean, all the commanders in NYPD are up and up. They document all the crimes exactly as they happen, right? They never try to downgrade crimes. That doesn't happen. That's only in fantasy world. The NYPD is exactly what happens. So we have someone elderly that was assaulted. Was that documented as a felony? And then we saw this. What we saw to me is a gang assault. We have an elderly person getting attacked by more than three, right? Three or more, and you have a gang assault when you cause serious injury. And so someone elderly, I think that, well, listen, I'm not a doctor, but I think that's something that needs to be changed, or maybe it's a case-by-case basis, right? Because the wording and the language in the penal law is very interesting, right? So it often says that in order to have a gang assault, you need more than three, right? Or is it three or more? I think it's three or more for a gang assault, right? Three or more perpetrators that cause, their intention is to cause serious injury, and they cause serious injury. Now, someone elderly, a minor injury, maybe something that may be minor to you or me, Marlon, may be serious to an elderly person. So I'm curious how that was documented. And also, we see those gang members actually starting to jostle his pockets. To me, what is their intention there, right? Crime goes based on their intention. To me, is to see if he has anything in his pocket to take his money. So I think they should be charged with robbery. So I'm curious to see what they would charge. What our friends and listeners think. I'm curious, were they charged with attempted robbery? Were they charged with gang assault? And I think that, I think that's a big, I mean, think about, it's much different to be someone elderly, right? Like a UTI, urinary tract infection, which is a very minor thing to most people. But when it comes to elderly people, it could be fatal. So I think that's why I say, it's a bruising. If someone elderly is bruised or cause a sprain, that could be a serious injury. Someone elderly, and they often say, I mean, I heard this for years. If someone's older and, in their 70s or 80s and they break their hip and they get surgery, sometimes that leads to their demise. So a serious injury could be far different for someone elderly than someone who's younger and their bodies are more capable.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a comment there from Ben Cintron. Ben,
a stupid racist comment.
Ben is one of my. We all have our own individual fans on here. I have Slick Rick, and I guess Ben is another one. He goes, I bet if Marlon worked in a white neighborhood, he would have never ticketed them for spitting. Come on, Ben. Seriously? I worked in black neighborhoods, and I only ticketed one guy once for spitting. And again, I said I had to collar him because he had no ID on him. Right? The point is here, Ben, that these are tools that we use when we have no other options. Okay. And if I worked in a white neighborhood, or whatever neighborhood, and I told you to do something, I gave you a lawful order and you refused to obey that lawful order, I would find a reason to get you in handcuffs. Yes. Okay. And if that happened to be, if you happen to have spit at that same moment, yes, I'm going to use that spitting to get you in handcuffs. Okay. Because again, the people in that neighborhood, whichever neighborhood it is, whether it's black, white, brown, purple, whatever, they're counting on cops to make the neighborhood safe for them to be able to do their business. Okay. So, it's just a tool that I used because I had no other options there. Okay. And had that gentleman complied with my order, I would have never had to use it. Why don't you ask questions about these guys who refuse to obey lawful commands and they force cops to throw them in cuffs? Okay. If you did what you're supposed to do, then I wouldn't even be on that corner. Okay. I wouldn't even be taking enforcement action on that corner because there are many other places in the command where, I can patrol around, I can concentrate around. So, but you seem to have a problem with me doing that. Okay. So, completely ignoring the fact that, again, there are plenty black and brown people in those neighborhoods who want me to do that. So again, they can go about their business. So I think this is a misguided comment, Ben, and it's it's wrong because I as a cop, I would do my job regardless of which neighborhood I'm in. So
I think Bend Over is a huge fan of yours.
Yeah.
He's definitely. We all have our number one trolls and number one fans.
Yeah, yeah,
Bend
yeah.
Over, he belongs to you all, and he's yours. So if we
Yeah,
ever do a meetup, we ever do an event, we should all get one of our trolls and honor them. You probably get Bend Over. I think I'll probably get Juju. We all get our number one fans. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like, what are we talking about here? This is why a lot of these black and brown neighborhoods are like that. Come on, guy.
Mom, you weren't locking up all those white people in the 8-1? All those full white people, right? Or 7-7? Where are they?
Ben, if Ben wants, when I get back in, Ben, and you want to send me to a white neighborhood, you should put in a request to let me go to that neighborhood so I could be a cop there too. Okay, it's like, come on, Ben. Yeah,
I don't even understand the point. First of all, I don't know what you think about it. I didn't go out looking to write people for spitting. I didn't go out to look for jaywalking. But honestly, like, if you're a grown man and you're walking spitting in the street, it's fucking disgusting. Honestly, I think it's disgusting. Like, you can't go to a bathroom somewhere and spit somewhere, but you got to just spit right in the middle of the street, or at least spit in a bush. I'm sorry, it's fucking disgusting. And if that is an interaction with a legitimate perpetrator, stop him. That's what I'm talking about, doing intrusive police work. If you could find, listen, I never forget, in the Lower East Side, we had a legitimate perp who was a drug dealer. We always had eyes on him doing SNU, street narcotics enforcement unit work, but he was damn good. He knew how to distance himself. He had all the kids working for him. He was damn good. We couldn't get him. So you know what? I would get him with parking tickets. Am I into parking tickets? No, but this guy would always park by fire hydrants, park where he wanted. That was the only thing he messed up on. When it came to drug dealing, he was good, man. He had the whole neighborhood on his side. On Fridays and Saturdays in the summer, he would pay. It was in the Lower East Side, 118 Avenue D. 118 Avenue D. He would pay for the kids to go to a great adventure with the family, so they all were on his side. He was slick, but he didn't know where to park his car, so I would give him parking tickets. Why not? I knew he was out there dealing drugs. I would give him parking tickets. If he was spitting the street, I would give him a spitting summons. Yeah, I would. Oh no, but it's okay because he's black. But and you know what? I never worked in white neighborhoods, but I worked in the Lower East Side. Obviously, I worked in housing, but it's more of a mixed neighborhood. So I've gave summonses to white people. It's a stupid thing. I don't even understand that question. What's the point? So Marlon, you're the black guy that is reverse racist. You summons black people, but you protect white people. What is he saying? Is that what he's saying?
I guess so. He's saying that I wouldn't be the cop in a white neighborhood. Yeah, okay, man. All right. Yeah. But he'd probably catch a fit if I let him know that I also gave people tickets for littering. And I love that one because you know how many perps would throw shit out their car, and thinking that, you're not gonna notice that. You can't use that against me. Oh yes, I can. Okay. And as a homeowner now, I said if I get back on the job, because here's the thing, my neighborhood is pretty decent, but the one thing we get is guys who drive around and they toss stuff out their car onto the islands in the middle of the road, right, and in the middle of my house. So I gotta every now and then I gotta go outside and pick up the trash on the island, So I said if I come back, I'm gonna have zero tolerance for litter, especially now that I'm a homeowner and I see how much that shit like ruins neighborhoods. And we have a park not too far from here too, that if you walk on the sidewalk opposite the park, you see all kinds of trash. People dump all kinds of crap there, So and had it not been for that, I mean the park itself wouldn't be too bad. But you see how people like who don't have any stake in the neighborhood come and they deteriorate it by doing shit like that. So he'd catch a fit if he knows that I have zero tolerance for that as well. But
hey, KB, KB in New York City, I see you, brother. Hey, KB, do we work together? I used to say the same thing, man. It's hilarious. And KB knows what I'm talking about. He says, we used to joke that one dealer in our command would go to jail for the parking tickets before the actual drugs he was selling. Yeah. Listen, getting dealers is hard. You know, a lot of times, you know, the whole point is SNU, right? Anyone who did SNU. I was the anti-crime sergeant in the Lower East Side of PSA 4. And at the time, Joanne Jaffe, that piece of shit, she disbanded SNU. And I'm sorry to say that, but I say that because I saw that woman who was a chief berate men in public. Absolutely. That anyone who says, "Oh, well, she had to do that because she's a woman to be tough." No, I'm sorry. That's not how you. That's not how you treat people, even if they're wrong. You don't berate people in front of people like that. It's absolutely disgusting. So that's why I say that. But anyway, SNU was disbanded. So we did the street narcotics enforcement unit operations 4 times a month. Because the Lower East Side, it's just a drug haven. There was so much drugs there. Market was unbelievable. And a lot of times you would get guys that were dealing and you would just keep them out there, right? You would keep locking up the buyers and work with narcotics and leave them out there so that you could get felony A-weight. Because it's tough to get these guys. But sure as hell, you can get them on parking tickets. So I'm with you, brother. So KB, I don't know. Did we work together, brother? Because it sounds a lot familiar. Maybe we worked together. Or you retired. I don't know, man. Please tell me. But this is, that's why intrusive police record, broken windows is important. And exactly what you're talking about. I think litter, I didn't write summonses for littering, but thinking about it now, as I get older, if I had to go back in time, I would have. I never did, but I would have. Why? Because it does destroy neighborhoods. I don't want to live in a neighborhood with this garbage on the floor. Why? So other people see it like, oh, who cares? Throw it on the floor. They see it. Listen, if they see it, if you treat it like a piece of shit and you live there, why should other people that drive through your neighborhood treat it any better? The same thing goes in your house. If you didn't clean your house, why would people come in your house and be respectful, right? Just have something and throw it on the floor. It's absolutely disgusting. So,
true.
You know, to some people's comments here, if I had to go back, and I didn't do it, I really wasn't good at writing tickets. I liked making arrests. I liked looking for the perpetrators. I hated writing nice people tickets. Not black people, white people. I don't give a shit. I just didn't like writing nice people. Unfortunately, sometimes you do. You have to write a nice person a ticket. But I had a hard time writing. If someone was nice and they smiled at me and said, "Oh man, I'm having a rough day," I didn't want to write them a ticket. I felt bad because I knew I was hitting their pocket. Right? Anytime you write a ticket, you're hitting someone's pocket. So it takes a lot of responsibility. It takes some balls to write somebody a ticket. You got to kind of leave your heart at home, right? Because when you write someone a ticket, you ruin their day. But if I had to go back in time, I would definitely write summonses for littering. Wouldn't you? Think about it, right?
Yeah.
I would definitely.
Yeah. In fact, my first arrest was from littering, as a rookie. I'm a rookie in the 7-3, and I don't know anything.
Your first arrest for this I gotta hear.
For littering, literally.
It sounds like
They put me with a senior guy, and he's like, we're driving around, and he's looking to get me a collar, right? This may be my second day on patrol. Yeah, it might be my second day on patrol. Anyway, we're driving and in the 7-3, and we see a guy who just tosses a wrapper into the street, and he goes, "That guy, let's pull him over. We're gonna summons him, right?" But he popped on a warrant, so we took him in, and he went through the system, right?
Do you remember what the warrant was for?
Huh?
Do you remember?
I forget what the warrant is for. It's Brownsville, At that time, everybody had a warrant.
Yeah.
But so it was my first arrest. But later on, I only, the littering was only a means for me to get guys, or to stop you, But the thing is, now that again, as I'm a homeowner, and I see how much like littering really does tear down your neighborhood and make your neighborhood uglier, even if it's a lower income neighborhood, it doesn't have to look lower income. It doesn't have to look like a shithole, but it does because we tolerate stuff like that. And this is one thing, by the way, like I never understand with the city, because the city always, these politicians always like the virtue signal to us about like climate change and all this bullshit, but they don't, you would think they would have tripled the fines for things like littering, right? Because I think most people wouldn't have a problem with it. Homeowners wouldn't have a problem with it. Older folks who live in even in the low income neighborhoods wouldn't have a problem with it. But yet that's something that like we haven't done. And I would rather they do that than to do all the bullshit they're doing with the speeding laws, with the lowering the speeding, the speed limits on these streets, all looking for revenue for the city. I'd rather them triple the fines on littering rather than them do that, because at least littering, that would be something productive that they would be doing to enhance the city and make a lot of these neighborhoods not look like shitholes,
Yeah, you know what? I agree with Brother Bry. This was always my pet peeve with the job, and I think sometimes broken windows. John, you mentioned broken windows earlier. Welcome back, brother. Brother Bry says, my impact sergeant always said never write the working man. And that's where I think broken windows is misunderstood, and people don't get intrusive police work. So the whole point of interacting with someone on a lower level is to potentially stop a crime or grab yourself a perpetrator that may be about to commit a crime. And so that's why I agree with Brother Bry, because there were plenty of times, I seen rookies, numbers for numbers. You get that guy, he's working his ass off. He's on his way home on the train, and he's walking down the street. And he cracks open a beer. The guy's working all day. Maybe he's in a work uniform or in a suit. Like, that's not the guy you want to give a summons to. But there were cops. I have to admit, there were cops that did summons those kind of people. That shit I hated. Like, that's the working man. That guy's out working his ass off, sweating. He's got a gravity knife in his pocket because he was doing construction all day. He cracks open a beer. Like, why are we summoning that guy? That's not the whole point of broken windows. So that's where I had a problem with it.
Yeah, if you crack open a beer and you keep it moving and you toss the beer out in a garbage can, I mean, who does that bother, No?
Yeah, what's the impact?
Yeah, that's not hurting the neighborhood, but, it's a whole discussion we could go into about all of that nonsense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but when you go into things that actually harm the neighborhood, who are you going to target? Like, let's be honest. Who are you going to target? You're going to target predominantly Black and brown males, the marginalized community, and they're going to consider it racist. So they actually don't want you doing any of that stuff. All the stuff that the left is fighting against, they're not really fighting against it. They're just targeting law-abiding, tax-paying New Yorkers. The people that are actually causing the problems, they don't want you to interact with. They don't want you to go after the cars that have no registration, no insurance. They don't want you to go after the guy that has a suspended license. They don't want you to go after any of those people, because when you do, they're going to say that the NYPD is racist. Oh, you're going after Black and brown communities. Oh, well, you know what? Sorry, I went to Toad Hill, and guess what? People that own $3 million homes don't litter. It's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird. They don't throw shit on the floor. They don't piss in front of their house. They don't take a shit in their stairwell. It's weird, but when I go to the projects, people are pissing in their own elevator, shitting in the stairwells. Like, yeah, like, sorry. And yeah, is it like a socioeconomic problem? Yeah, 100%, because obviously if you have money, you have a house, you don't live in a building with other people, right? Like there's all of these other factors that are put into it, but they're not racist. Like, either you want that neighborhood to look nice or you don't. And if you want that neighborhood to look nice, you want us to target who's doing whatever the hell they're doing. But yeah, I don't know where you guys were. I'm sorry, I had to run out and take my daughter somewhere.
We just kind of went off a tangent. Our friends and listeners are really engaged in the chat. It's great conversation. Just talking about police work stuff, but we talk about broken windows, intrusive police work. And of course, Ben Cintron, one of Marlon's fans, said that Marlon wouldn't write a white guy a spitting ticket. So we just kind of went off on it. But that's the reality. The reality, because Marlon's reverse racist. He's racist against Black people. And he takes care of white people. But that's the reality. That's one thing I hate about it. Intrusive police work, broken windows. Get someone who's a potential perpetrator. Get someone who, and if you're working in a neighborhood, you should know who these people are. You should know them. But the guy that gets home, that's the worst thing. You want to talk about quotas? Yes, the NYPD had quotas. Anyone says they don't, full of shit. And there were cops that couldn't find a perpetrator, and they would write that guy who was on his way home from work, wearing an HVAC uniform, sweating his ass off, who cracked open a beer. That's not the guy we write a ticket. And that's why we get opposite. And that's why there's a lot of people that hate the police. Let's be honest. Why is that guy getting a ticket? But that does, there's quotas in place, but that comes back down to fair leadership also. There should be some sergeant say, what are you doing? Don't ever do that again. Why are you writing that guy a ticket? This is the guy. That's the working man. That's what Brother Brian is talking about. You're absolutely right. That's the working man. You want that guy to love the police, not hate the police.
Yeah. So what other topics did you guys cover?
We were
actually kind of waiting for you to get back. But we didn't touch on this one yet, which this we got to talk about this. Yeah. So just a little background on this, guys. We touched on this earlier in the week when we first heard it happen. Or was it last week? Anyway, I think it was last Friday. As a matter of fact.
No, it was this week we touched on it.
Yeah, it was this week. Yeah.
So anyway,
it's going slow.
Yeah. So anyway, this specifically is about a rookie cop whose firearm was used to, his brother was shot in the eye with that firearm, and there's a lot of details that we're currently missing. But the rookie cop has been suspended now, and the brother is he died. But we've now come to learn that the brother himself was he was a part of the National Action Network with Al Sharpton, and he was a young aspiring, I guess, community advocate or whatever they call it, whatever Sharpton calls himself, right? But there are a lot of questions that come out of this one, and they range from what exactly happened to, his training and how exactly his brother gets a hold of a firearm and is able to, get shot in the eye. But, I think it's a good discussion to be had here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we grabbed it last week. I mean, obviously, now knowing what we know, we could see why there's very little reporting on it. And we really don't know the facts on it, right? We know that the cop was suspended as a result of it. There were rumor that the cop was potentially cleaning his gun and shot his brother. I think the call came over at like 1:30 in the morning. So I would say it's probably not likely, although we don't know what tour he was working. Maybe he worked 4 to 12, came home, cleaned his gun. Kind of sounds a little strange to me. I don't know about that one. Is it possible the brother got a hold of the cop's firearm and shot himself either accidentally or intentionally? And I would say, like, knowing what we know now, I think that if I had to make an educated guess, I would say that it looks like the brother, and again, I'm just saying from what I'm seeing and what I'm reading, this is just my opinion. I think it looks like to me that the brother got a hold of the cop's gun, whether the cop showed it to him or didn't show it to him, and he was messing with that gun and he went like this and pulled the trigger. And, I think that it wouldn't look too good in the media to see one of the young advocates against gun violence, where it turns out he was actually playing with a gun and then either accidentally or intentionally shot himself. And I think that's why we haven't really seen that type of reporting, and they kind of distanced the two stories from each other. But eventually it winded up coming out. So, yeah, I don't know. Originally, I said it looks like the cop's career is going to be over because of this. But now knowing who the cop is tied to and all this other stuff, I wouldn't be shocked if actually goes on to have a fruitful career after this. I mean, obviously his brother's dead, and I'm sure nobody wanted that. But we don't know. Again, we don't know. It could it be that the brother shot him intentionally? It could be. Who the hell knows? We don't really know. Like, we're not investigating the case, but all those possibilities are there. But I think the strongest possibility is obviously that.
Listen, I think beyond the investigation, this case has drawn some attention, obviously, because the brother is seen as a community type advocate. But it caught attention later in the week, and it just shows you that it caught attention later in the week, and that there was not a lot of information being put out at the onset of his demise, his tragic demise. Because if it was, we would have reported on it. We didn't, because there was a lack of information out there. We were led to believe even with the title, led to believe that there was some type of blame on the cop. And that I think it was intentionally done by the papers to direct their attention towards the cop itself. But there was a lot of context missing, a lot of information. I'm pretty sure the NYPD has already wrapped that up and figured it out. But a lot of information has not been put out there. And I think obviously the same thing what you think, John Marlon, is because he's a community advocate. And I don't think that the community advocates and that group that he deals with wants that information out there. I mean, it appears, on the onset, we all believe that maybe the cop was cleaning his gun or had an accidental discharge. But the more that we look at this case and the lack of information that's out there, and in light of the attention that has been drawn to this tragic death, that he was a community advocate. I think his name is Kuzmani Diallo, right? Interesting, his last name is Diallo, right? That's a famous name also. And I think it also drawn attention now because of that. I think it's likely, I don't want to say, right, I don't know, but it's likely that he was using the gun. The more I thought about that case and where he was shot, it's likely that he was playing with it or using it. Now, does that make him a bad person for being curious, playing with the gun? No, but it does. It's definitely a conversation that people have to respect firearms, and I also think it's the culture of New York City, and we have things like this happen with these accidental discharge or people being injured by playing with guns, because it's such a culture of being anti-gun that people don't understand how to use firearms. And if it was more preached that guns are not bad and guns are just another tool, and if people actually understood how guns work, it'd be less of a chance of these tragic things happening.
Yeah. I think, like we said when this first came up, there's a lot to talk about the training when it comes to this and how exactly this young cop was safeguarding his firearm. But like John said, the fact that his brother was involved with the National Action Network probably means that the story is going to be buried, And I see in the chat that someone mentions that the brother was arrested 3 months ago. I forgot who said it in the chat, but we have no confirmation on any of that. But I do find that very interesting. And again, that points to why this won't be talked about, because it's bad press for National Action Network. It's bad press for Tish and the NYPD and training in the NYPD and firearm safety in the NYPD. So again, don't expect the news media to bring up any of this.
Yeah, and that's, again, I mean, we spoke about it earlier in the week, but that's why you don't let anyone touch a gun. Or allow anyone to have access to your gun, especially when you're young, you're a rookie. Maybe you don't come from a police family. Maybe you don't come from a neighborhood where there are cops. Everybody's, yo, let me touch your gun. Like, nah, I'm good, bro. Like, you're not touching nothing. I don't want to touch what you do at work. You don't have to touch what I do at work. Like, don't let anyone play with your gun. And if you're gonna, at least make sure there's not a bullet in it. Take the magazine out, make sure there's nothing in the chamber, keep that gun open, and make sure that gun is free and clear and safe. That's the least you could do. You don't hand somebody a loaded firearm, for millions and millions of reasons, So I think that's again, it's a tragedy, because again, to me, it looks like it was a really dumb thing that happened. It looks like it was an accident. It doesn't look like it was an intentional on either of their part. And I think that, and someone says, Rob Marsh says, leave it in your locker. Look, you might not necessarily, might not be good to leave in your locker, honestly. You're a police officer. Like, maybe you might need that. I don't know who you're going to lock up. I don't know who you ran into. I don't know who knows you're a cop, but you should learn how to secure your firearm. And if you're living in a home where you can't properly secure your firearm, then maybe I would say, yeah, leave that in your locker. Or if you're having issues with people in your family, yeah, leave it in your locker. Or your neighbors, yeah, leave it in your locker. But, I'm a big proponent of actually carrying your firearm. And I think like if you're gonna live in, maybe they live in the same room. I don't know what that setup is. If you live in the same room as your brother, maybe it's not too smart to come home, bring that gun home. So definitely a tragedy, however you wrap it up. But again, the media, the NYPD, they do a great job of not giving people the full story of what happened. And you're left to wonder and sit there what happened. And originally, it's like it makes it sound like the cop shot his own brother, and when you look at the headlines, when you look at the information that came out, that's how it sounds. But if you really think about it logically, more than likely that did not happen.
I think I agree with you, John. And here's the flashpoint here. I think that the firearm, what we spoke about, I think it was Monday we spoke about this, Marlon. Maybe Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it was Monday. The news week goes so fast. But we spoke about the firearm and the cop becoming one. And I think the cop should be one with that firearm. I'm so comfortable with it, you should carry it. John, I agree with you. You should carry that firearm. A lot of my career, I didn't carry it, and I think it's a mistake. Looking back and going forward now, I think you should carry that firearm. And I think you should become one with that gun. It should be a part of you. You carry your wallet, you carry your keys, you should carry a gun. I think it should be something that you're comfortable with carrying. It shouldn't be foreign to you. And if you're always leaving it in your locker, it does become foreign to you. So I do think you should carry that firearm. But it's an interesting point you brought up, John, right? You said, I don't touch your stuff at work. Why touch mine? I agree. It's just a curiosity of guns. And it's unfortunate because the culture and what I found is traveling by RV, and it's not just New York, because that's what I grew up in New York. I always thought that people had this kind of feared moment of guns. But I've traveled to so many places where guns are just, part of, like I said, people carry their wallets, they carry their keys, they carry their guns. Young kids are exposed to guns. It's not a thing of fear. It's just another tool. And it's just like the same thing. If your brother was a construction worker, are you going to just start breaking out his Midas saw or a circular saw? And the reality is, if you did, and if you don't know anything about a Midas saw or a circular saw or a table saw, you can cut your finger off. I mean, those things are very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So the same thing with a firearm. If you don't know anything about a firearm, but you're curious and you grab that firearm, well, you can get yourself injured. It's just there's a lot more curiosity when it comes to guns. But there's a lot of professions that if you touched their trades work or their tools, you'd probably get hurt. But because it's a gun and there's curiosity, and it's because it's a cop, it's and this guy's a community advocate, it's a big story. So I think we need to change the culture, and guns should not be this scary tool that, oh my God, guns are bad. It's just a tool. You carry your wallet, you carry your keys, you carry your gun, just another tool. But this mystique we spoke about of a gun I think leads to more harm.
Yeah. Modern Samurai, Eric is talking about demystifying the gun, And I think you're crazy if you're a cop and you're walking around the city, especially parts of Brooklyn, of course, the Bronx, and even parts of, Queens, and Staten Island. You're crazy if you're not walking around with your firearm on you, because, I've explained before, when I was a rookie and I lived in the 7-1, I was coming from the 7-7 and I drove into a shooting, I think I actually drove into 2 shootings that day. I just happened to see one occur right in front of me because before I turned the corner onto Utica Avenue, there was a guy on the floor and there was a group of kids darting across the street. And just as I turned southbound on Utica, I see the kid pull up on a bike and pull out his gun and fire a round at that Rugged Soul, I think it used to be called, the shoe store in that corner. But I learned a lesson that day, though, that you just because you're in the tour doesn't mean you're in the tour until you actually get home, and you got to keep your wits about you. So same thing about your firearm. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna be ready to use it, but you gotta, it's about an awareness, and you gotta be aware of the fact that you're in places that aren't that safe, okay? And shit could go sideways at a moment's notice. And you're still a cop, by the way, okay? And keep in mind, also, if you're a cop who's active, half of these perps all know each other from somewhere, So you never know which of these perps you're going to bounce into accidentally off duty. So you just got to have that mindset, and you got to understand and know your firearm. Okay, it's not going to go fire itself off. Okay, So it's a tool that you got to understand and treat as a tool, and not like some scary thing that'll shoot itself or pull its own trigger. So
Yeah, especially if you work where you live. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah, yeah,
reality. Like Staten Island cops, you're crazy if you don't. I locked up this dude. He had just got off out of parole for extortion, right? And so he went on, broke up some diner, and I wound up locking him up. And I wound up going to federal court for like months. My ICO was pissed. It was always on my RDO on Mondays. And, I testify against the guy, and he gets a few years in jail. I forget how many. Not a lot, but they violate his parole. He goes back. And, originally I didn't carry my gun either because I was always doing things I shouldn't be doing with a gun, like going out drinking, hanging out, going to the beach, doing all this stuff. So you're not gonna carry a gun in those situations, because then you're an idiot if you carry a gun. You're going to go to a bar and drink and you carry a gun, you're a moron. Like, you're gonna go to the beach and carry a gun, there's something fucking wrong with you. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
you're gonna swim with the gun.
Yeah, like, like there's something seriously wrong with you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be tactical Eddie at the beach, in your Speedos. But I actually I came down with the flu and I was out sick, and so I wasn't carrying my gun. I was off duty. I was out of it. I wasn't my normal self where I'm like looking around, I'm hyper vigilant, really wasn't feeling well. Hadn't seen my father in a while. And so I was like, oh, let me go see my dad. I haven't seen him in like a week. I was sick. I go drive towards my father's house. I go to the gas station that I'm familiar with. I go inside a gas station right on where my father was living at the time, on his corner. And boom, who jumps out of the car as I'm in the gas station? And it's the dude that just got out of jail that I sent to prison, and all his friends, and they're not getting gas. So I'm like, fuck, these motherfuckers followed me. I didn't even realize it. You know what I mean? I was like, shit, I didn't even see that they were around or anything. And anyway, nothing came of it. I gave him a good talking to. I won't go into that. It's a long story. But end of the day, they get back in the car, leave. And one, they left not because of the fear of me physically, because they were all bigger than me. They were all bigger than me. They were big dudes. Obviously, the dude had the jail body going. He wasn't much bigger than me. He was actually shorter than me. I was probably bigger than him muscularly.
So he was 4'11".
But his two buddies were big. They were big dudes. And they were waiting outside. And, he tried to play a game with me. Yeah, exactly. Body
John, he was shorter than you?
Yeah, he was shorter. He was a tiny guy. He had a big fucking nose like this big. I was going to break his nose. But long story short, nothing happens. He leaves, not because of fear of me, because they're afraid of the police department. He's afraid to go back to jail, right? He knows that if he does anything to me, they put a hand on me, they're going to be consequences to pay, right? Like, he's going back to jail. I already sent him to jail, right? So it's not like, it's not hard. Like, if he didn't think he was going to jail, or he thought like maybe just spend the night or two, believe me, I would have got my ass kicked that day, maybe even worse. And what happens is, they leave, and I sit there and I'm like, holy shit, I got caught out there. That could have been real bad. No gun, no nothing, no anything. And I was like, wow, I got fucking caught out there. That shit can't happen to me again.
Yeah. Juju, where's Juju's comment? Juju says that I want cops. He says, you want cops to be armed at all time for what reason exactly? You're a paranoid freak who loves violence. I'm a paranoid freak who likes. Let me tell you something, Juju. Right? I live in a decent neighborhood, but even in my neighborhood, there was twice. Right? There was people driving by and fired off rounds from their car. Once, a guy on a motorcycle going southbound, he drove late at night. I believe they're probably coming from some of the bars or clubs north of us, right? But twice they fired off rounds, and my security, I played it on one episode like a while ago. My security camera picked it up, right? And also, one day I was going to work, right? So I pulled off and I started going southbound, and I realized that I forgot something. I forgot what it was. Was it my phone or something? So I had to turn back, right? So I parked across the street and I just walked a couple, a couple of houses back and crossed the street, right? So I went in, got my stuff, and then I'm leaving. As I'm leaving, I noticed a guy across the street, right? He was crossing the street, but happened to be doing it at the same time as I'm crossing the street to go to my car. So I'm like, that's weird. Why is he looked like he's walking towards me? So it turns out he walks directly in front of me, right? So just as we're gonna meet at the island, there's no reason for that. Okay, no reason for that. As we're about to meet, I stopped and I put my hand out and I go, after you. I had my other hand on my firearm on the side because if you're an active cop, you learn to recognize certain signs that things are off. Okay, that this is weird. Okay, so the point I'm making here is that if you're a cop 24/7, and you never know, because even in the best neighborhoods in the city, unfortunately, things have changed in the city, and perps are more emboldened. And even in the safest parts of the city, they're more emboldened to get at you, to take advantage of people who they think might not be aware of what's going on. So if you're a cop, yes, you should be armed at 24/7. You're stupid if you're not, okay? Because if it's you walking with your family and something, God forbid, something happens to you, to them, what are you gonna do? Okay, you're the guy who they were looking to protect them, and what are you gonna do? So
Donahue says he's always armed because he's been taught verbal judo.
Well, first of all, this idea that carrying a firearm means you promote violence is the most ridiculous thing. It's just the stupidest thing. First of all, it's your Second Amendment right to carry a firearm. You should want to protect yourself. You should love yourself enough that you want to protect yourself and you want to protect your family. That doesn't mean promote violence. That just means that you're ready as a last resort. I mean, it's the stupidest thing. You don't need a firearm to promote violence. This idea, and by the way, Nin, that's what Nin's saying here. Nin, thank you for being here. I love that Nin is calling us weird. Nin's saying, I support the military complex, and I'm a tool. And then the funny part is you call me a tool, but man, you're hanging out with me for 3 hours. I love it, brother. Thank you so much. Imagine people that if I made fun of someone, called them a tool or a loser, but I watched it for 3 hours. So who's the tool? Who is it? Is it me or you? You can call me what you want, brother, but just I'm calling you a fan. That's the difference. So Nin, I appreciate it, man. When we have a get together, I want to invite you.
Nin's like a Norm from Cheers.
Yeah.
I watched Cheers. Norm one day, he turns to like one of the guys. He goes, "People are such losers. They got no lives, They sit at the bar all day and drink. Just yesterday, this guy's sitting here for 8 hours with me." That's Nin.
That's pretty much what it is.
Like, if we're losers, Nin, you're a big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you. You too.
Yeah, well, was this guy ever a cop even? Jeez, man. That's
that's the thing. How many people in the NYPD were police officers but never actually were cops? I mean, and that's the thing. Like, you know what I mean? You have different careers than people. You have different lives than people, and they just don't understand it, dude. Like, they just don't understand what they're talking about. I mean, I could name instance after instance. Most of the run-ins I've had with perps, because I didn't treat them like they're pieces of shit, because I knew that could have been me, my friend, my uncle, my father, anybody. I treated everybody how I would expect to be treated. I did everything that I expected a police officer should do if I wasn't one. Right. And like, so I treated everyone like that. So almost all of the run-ins that I consistently had with people in Staten Island were overwhelmingly positive. Yo, bro, what's up? Blah, 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 blah. But if you think I wasn't paranoid, hell yeah, I'm paranoid. I had a little, when my wife first gets pregnant, I have like a little 2-door Infiniti, tinted out, silver, the one. You guys all know that one, right? The regular jerk-off Infiniti that everybody had around that time.
You're the selfish guy.
Yeah. And so, I just had the kid. I'm like, oh man, I gotta get a truck now. I gotta get a different car. But I'm in that car. The earlier week, I just did a search warrant on this kid's house. I got my daughter, my newborn, in the back seat of that 2-door car in her thing, right? Like in her little thing. And again, I saw them. I seen them. I knew they were coming. I had my hand on my gun. and he rolls up with all his boys right up on me on Richmond Road, right by the cemetery. Right, we're on Richmond Road. He's about to go up the hill, but he like comes up. I'm trying to like get away from him a little bit, right? Because I know I got my daughter in the car. So now I'm like, I got my hand on my gun the whole time. And I'm like, I'm just staring. I'm like, what's up, bro? You all right? You all right? He's like, yeah. And now I can't even go through the light, or else I would have just went through the light. Is that being paranoid, or is that being smart? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, is that being paranoid, or is that being smart? I don't know what this kid's going to do. I locked him up previously for a robbery. I did a search warrant on his house. Now he's with all his friends. He thinks I'm by myself. They don't know I have a baby in the car. Doesn't appear that like I'm not gonna have a baby on board with on a tinted out Infinity with low profile rims on it. Like, you know what I mean? I gotta sell the car to go buy a truck. Like, you know, and I'm like, is that paranoia? Is that no? That's just common sense, man. Like if I could have went through the red light and went around that scenario and avoided that scenario, I absolutely would have. But there was no way for me to avoid it, you know? And that's not being paranoid. And I'm glad I had my firearm on me that day, because I'll tell you what, if things would have went bad, I would have had to use it, you know? And it's the same thing. Like when you're a cop, like, and even if you're a civilian, you know, I always tell everyone, don't ever pull up on somebody's bumper. Give yourself room to get out to the left, to the right. You never know if you're going to get boxed in or anything like that. I mean, that reality is real for cops, right? Because there's a good chance you might get boxed in. You know what I mean? Somebody might want to do a hit on you, and it's happened. And so I don't think that that's paranoia at all. I think that's just being a realist. And honestly, I think when you're armed, you're more responsible too, because you're not out there drinking. You're using your head. You understand the reality of this thing that you have. And, you know, I that's why I always say, I think an armed society is a safer society. I really do. And I think, you know, I think when you're a cop and you're out there and you live where you work, you know, yeah, there's a state of paranoia there, but it's reasonable paranoia. You should have that. If you don't, you're basically walking around with your head up your ass and you think everything's hunky-dory, or you, like Nin, signed up to use the NYPD as a stepping stone, whether it to be for a political career, whether it to be for just clout, and you never actually did the core function of policing, which is go out, figure out what crimes are happening in the neighborhood you're policing, and then go after the people that are committing those crimes. If you never did that, yeah, then you don't need to carry a gun, because you were never really a cop anyway. You just got paid by the NYPD. It's a totally different thing. And there's plenty of people like that. There's plenty of people.
I got you know, it's funny to say, I got a buddy, he lives in Alberta in Canada. And he recently came to visit me, a good friend of mine. And we were hanging out in an area where it's open carry in Nevada. And he was like, you know what? I love this shit. He goes, I love it. Because, you know, where he is, and Alberta is probably one of the more conservative spots in Canada, but even there, it's just completely anti-gun. That's a spot that Trump always kids around. That will be the 51st state in Canada, is Alberta. But, you know, in Canada, it's completely anti-gun. You can't have any guns right now. And so he loves it. He's like, I feel much safer here. Like that everybody here has guns. He's like, I know nothing's going to happen. He goes, I'd rather walk into a restaurant and see everyone with a gun on their hip than go out in Canada and no one has a gun in their hip. He goes, I feel safe. He's like, I know nothing's happening here. And I agree. I think the same way. And this idea that you want to be violent because you're carrying a gun is absolutely stupid. Nin. So should we never go to the gym? Like, oh, because you have muscles, you're going to promote violence. You shouldn't go to the gym, or you shouldn't go train martial arts because you're promoting violence. Should you just wither away and die? Like, what should we do, Nin? Like, Nin, what do you do? You don't go to the gym? You don't carry a gun? You don't? Like, what do you do? Would you not protect yourself and your family? I don't understand this ideology that's promoting violence. And yes, sometimes you got to meet violence with violence. You don't look for it, but there may come a time in your life where you have to stand your ground. What are you going to do as a man? You're not going to protect your wife or protect your kids? Yeah, you don't look for it, but you should be ready for it. You damn well. You know what? Tim Kennedy said it best. Anyone knows who Tim Kennedy is? I like Tim Kennedy. I know some people don't. I like him. And what he said is, his family will never know the violence that he's capable of, right? When he's with his wife, with his kids, right? They see that soft side of him, but he's ready. He's prepared for it. And it should be the same way, right? When I'm with my wife, my daughters, they don't know that, I'm ready. I know how to use a firearm. I train. I'm capable, and I'm ready to protect them. And that's what you should be at all times. If you love yourself and you love your family, well, you should be ready and able. That doesn't mean that you want to or you desire to and you're looking for it, but you should be ready for it, prepared. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just think people got their head up their ass. That's it. I just think they really, it's sick. Now, look, there's levels to things too, right? Like if you're a cop, you have your head. I worked with another guy. He used to, I'm not kidding. He had a 45 in a shoulder holster. That's how he would go home. 45 in a shoulder holster, which you're not allowed to have. He had his 9mm on his hip, and he had a what's it called? He had his off duty in his leg. And he used to go, and I'm like, dude, where are you going? You live in like Annandale, bro. Like, what's going on here? Like, go home. And he's like, you never know, bro. And like, he wasn't like, and he wasn't like a proactive cop. I mean, he did his job. He responded to 911 calls. He did his job. I mean, he's had some arrests under his belt, but I was like, dude, like, you all right? Like, what's going on? Like, where the fuck? It's like, what's happening here? Like, like, do you have any active threats against you? Like, what's, because as a person, I've had numerous threats against my life. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't walk around like that. You know what I mean? I keep my wits about me. Like, I stay armed, but I don't leave work like that. And so there are definitely extremes. I'm not saying, and what Nin's trying to make the case is that like, we're hyper paranoid and, we're ready for war. And like, that's not the case at all, man. That's not the case at all. I got a ton of credit on me right now. I'm not running out to the store to buy things. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like I go buy a lot of nice fancy things right now, and then I'm not going to go do it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's the same thing with, people are saying it here. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, and I think, when especially when you're with your family, like you're super vulnerable, man. Like you're vulnerable. Like the wolves got you. I always say that. Like I'm like, I could walk Times Square by myself. I could walk Bed-Stuy by myself. Nobody's fucking with me. I'm with my wife and my kids. Those chances increase significantly. And now you're vulnerable. Because you got your kids with you. And I'll tell you, like, that's the time when you really do have to be prepared. Like, you're vulnerable and you should be able to protect. And that's why, like, we've spoken about it before, like, when to pull out your gun, when not to pull out your gun. Like, and like I said, I don't ever have to have an MMA fight with 5 guys or 2 guys or a big guy that oversizes me. Like, if you're threatening my life for absolutely no reason, I mean, I'm going to be prepared. I just don't want to get caught out there. Like there's no reason you have to put up with that in your life. Any reasonable person, regardless if you're a cop or not. So I think, people like Nin try to play the whole, you don't need a gun. And that's literally is the whole communist People's Republic of New York mentality and I've had it, because I grew up there. And then you go out and what I realized is I didn't grow up in America. I grew up in the People's Republic of New York. That's what I realized. Yeah,
you sure did, bro. You know what? I would say it's a stupid theory, right? Just think about this. We're according to Nin and people like Nin about paranoia. If Nin's right, she's not. But why do we put a fence or a gate on our houses? Why do we lock our doors to our homes? Why do we lock our doors to our cars? Is that paranoia, or are we prepared to protect our belongings? It's the stupidest. It's just the stupidest thing. By the way, shout out to Jason. Yo, brother, I appreciate it. Speaking of muscles, Jason says, also, Eric looks like he's gaining his muscle back. This Eric is better than Ozempic, Eric. Oh, thank you, brother. Let me tell you, atrophy from injury is legit, man. I suffered some severe atrophy from injury. So, Jason, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. But am I right, John? If we're talking about paranoia, right? Why lock your doors then? Why do we lock our doors to our homes? Why are we locking our doors to our cars? Why do we put a gate in front of our homes with a fence? Is that paranoia? Should we not have any of those things in place? I mean, if that's basically what people are saying. Why have anything?
It's ridiculous.
Just leave your house door open. Come, about it. Have my wife if you want. Take my belongings. Take whatever you want. That's what we should do.
It's a stupid mindset, dude. Like I work out every day. People train martial arts every day. I went to a UFC fight a few years back. Derek Lewis, he was fighting in the Garden. So me and my buddy went. And then afterwards,
he's awesome.
afterwards we went out to get something to eat. And like, this is, you know, New York's still 24/7 at this point. Restaurants stay open late. So afterwards we go out and get something to eat. And TJ Dillshaw's manager comes in, older woman. And she goes, "Oh, are you guys fighters?" And we're like, "No." And she's like, "Well, what are you guys so in shape for? You guys look like you're ready for something." I'm like, "Life." Like,
There you go.
yeah,
That's a nice compliment, though.
Yeah. But I was like, she's like, "Oh, you know," and she gave us a card, you know, if you're ever interested. I was like, yeah, thanks, you know. And I was like, you know, it really, people like it's like the mentality that Nin's trying to say is that, like, if you're armed, you're more than likely to use violence. You're hyper paranoid. That same logic is saying that, well, if you work out, if you train martial arts, you're more likely to assault somebody in the street for no reason, and it's 100% the opposite. So you know, it's 100 because you're so much more confident. You don't have to prove yourself. Like you're actually less likely to get into a physical confrontation when you're competent physically. And the same thing is true when you carry a firearm and you're competent with that firearm and you understand it. You're so much less likely to get into a situation where you're going to have to pull it out. Now, the thing is, if your back is to the wall and you do have to use physical violence, well, guess what? You're capable of doing it. And in the other way, if you have a firearm and you're competent with it and your back's to the wall and you have to do it, well, guess what? You're capable of doing it. And guess what? You know who always stops the bad guy with the gun? The good guy with the gun. You know who always stops the bad guy that's willing to use violence? The good guy that's not afraid to use violence. So, I mean, your argument's ridiculous, then. It really is.
Well,
it's
think
not
about that.
It's just like, it's just reality.
Think about this, and I'm curious for both of you guys. So, in my career, I've never locked up a legal handgun owner that committed crime with that gun. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it never happened for me. Every person I locked up with a firearm they possessed that firearm illegally, or they had a record that would bar them from obtaining a firearm. I've never had someone with a legal handgun permit, handgun firearm license, commit a crime with that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but at least in my career. What about for you guys?
I personally never have, but I know of a couple of scenarios where legal gun owners were charged with menacing. You know, I personally have never conducted a search warrant for a gun from a legal gun owner or anything like that. I've never locked someone up on the street committing a crime. I know of a few neighbor disputes or domestic disputes where it was alleged that the person was a legal gun owner and menaced their neighbor or their loved one or whatever. And even those weren't like really proven. So, but have I ever seen a legal gun owner rob a bank, rob a person, shoot somebody? No, I haven't.
Me either.
I haven't.
Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same here for me. Never a legal gun owner, you know. Yeah. Although I had a case in Intel where you know the bosses ended up taking the owner's firearm, you know, and he was a legal owner, and that's a whole other conversation, but it speaks to the rules about how much bullshit the you know, terroristic threats are, and how much government uses it to you know, violate your rights. But again, that's a whole other conversation. I refused to take his gun, by the way, so I wasn't doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I hated. There were plenty of cops who did it. I saw them do it. I would never do it. If I locked up someone with a firearm, and it was a perpetrator with a legal firearm. But I hate those cops that someone was a legal gun owner in Pennsylvania or Virginia, and they had that firearm with them, and they were in New York, and they locked them up. Maybe that person was unaware of New York's gun laws, or maybe they weren't. Maybe they just felt I got my Second Amendment right to carry it, and they're legalized in Virginia. I saw cops arrest those guys. I thought that was a stupid arrest. Honestly, I just thought that was plain stupid.
I never really seen that. I never dealt with that, but I don't know. I never really saw that ever. But I do know of an instance of a retired cop. I don't believe he was an NYPD cop, but he had his HR 218, so he's okay to carry his firearm anywhere in New York City. And I know of an instance where the guy's shirt lifted and somebody called 911 because they saw his gun. And when the cops got there, he was concealed carrying it. And they were like, well, you know what? They saw it. So you actually weren't concealing it. So you were in violation. They locked him up and the fucking case stuck.
Really?
The case stuck. The judge.
Because you're a cop. Yeah,
the judge said, well, you only have it concealed. You only have it concealed. And so it wasn't concealed when the witness saw it. And this fucking guy got charged, lost his gun license. Like, I thought that would have never happened. I would have never.
That's pretty stupid. That is stupid.
Now, but it goes to show, like, for you cops out there and you retired cops out there, it really shows about concealing that weapon. Like, how, again, you're in the People's Republic of New York. You are not in America. Don't rationalize laws. Don't worry about what the Constitution says, because New York does not follow the Constitution. We know that. Like, you have to be very, very careful when you're carrying a firearm in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So we're 2 hours and 20 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. Friends and listeners, awesome chat today. I love the engagement. And if you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate it. Stick with us. We're here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday live. Friday's our roundtable and wrap up the news for the week in New York City. So stick with us. I think we should get to the coffee and donuts. Any housekeeping, Marlon?
Wait. Before we do, did you guys touch on the cop that got stabbed in the hand on Bell Boulevard?
No, we missed that one. You're right. That's
so. I mean, and just real quick on that. Like that. Like, obviously, if he would have had a gun, he would have been able to stop the individual. But he was out on Bell Boulevard, so he was probably hanging out. It was late at night, so he didn't have his firearm on him, which I would say is a smart move, right? But he's by himself. He gets approached by two individuals, and I don't know if they try to rob him, and he gets stabbed in the hand. And so that just shows, like, people like, you shouldn't carry. That's why I say, like, you shouldn't drink and you should carry, especially when you're out in New York, because you never know what the hell is going to happen. And you know how it is. People are out there, and if they think they got one up on you, they're coming. And it just shows that New York isn't as safe as it is. Because, again, and the kid didn't look like he was a weak kid either. So if they're targeting people that have that presence about them, that, like, I don't give a fuck, I'll fight you, think about what they're doing when you actually do look like a victim. So it just, that was just one thing.
Yeah. It goes to show that, even in the best of neighborhoods, Bell Boulevard has a lot of bars and restaurants on it over there, but it's not exactly, it's not exactly the South Bronx or Bed-Stuy, But it goes to show you that even in the best of neighborhoods or the better neighborhoods, that you still got to have presence, and you should, unless circumstances dictate that you not carry a firearm, which in this case involves drinking and a bar, then you should be carrying.
I just want to say I have a lot of fond memories of Bell Boulevard. I went hunting for girls there all the time. I used to go hunt for Jewish girls when I was young on Bell Boulevard. So
I never discriminated, Eric. I didn't care what.
I didn't discriminate against anyone, but it was always
or legal status. None of that mattered.
No, I didn't care. In my adulthood, I was a sucker for Latino women, but I still am. But when I was young, all the guys would say, "Go get the Jewish girls on Bell Boulevard," because they're the ones that put out. So I'm just saying that's what the word was. But anyway, Bell Boulevard is a good neighborhood, man. But yeah, listen, carry a firearm. You don't want to get stabbed in the hand. Better to have it and need it than not have it, right? So
and real quick, lightning round on Mamdani. Two things with him.
Oh, here we go.
One, he says that if you own a second home and it's worth over $5 million, he's coming for you, basically. He says, I can't read that at all. I'll read it to you real quick. He says, if you have a second home in New York City worth more than $5 million, check your mailbox when you're back in the 5 boroughs, because you've got mail. Today, we sent a notification to property owners letting them know our new pied-à-terre tax is coming. The best city in the world deserves the best parks, libraries, and schools in the world. That's only possible when we all pay our fair share. Now, this is coming from a guy who owns a compound in Uganda where the outskirts of that compound are all way below the poverty line. So he's coming for you. What do you guys think real quick about that? He's going to tax Now he's going after the millionaires. He's going after the millionaires and the billionaires who own second homes in New York City. Like, what does that do to the real estate market and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. What are the unintended consequences on the plan to convert a lot of these empty office buildings into residential condos? Because those are in Manhattan, and by residential condos, we're not talking about like your home for your retiree or your blue collar workers. We're talking about luxury condos for multimillionaires, and this, to me, this is kind of going to throw a monkey wrench in that plan, because I think that kind of stifles demand when these, when they're paying additional taxes on top of the already high property taxes that you'd pay after buying a $3 million plus condo. So I don't know what the plan is, but I think this is stupid, and it's not going to get enough money to plug the budget. So,
Well, I'm also,
again, not long-term thinking.
I'm just going to foreshadow here. And I just think this is just opening Pandora's box, and this is the front door for more issues like this. I mean, we've already seen it, right? Let's put your house at 78 degrees. Now we're going to tax your second property. And I think what they're trying to do is create more communism by what's next. You can only own one property. You can only own one car. You can only have a car that is hybrid or electric. So I think this is more and more of this. I don't think this is just about money. And obviously it is, but I think we're getting more towards moving to this communist type of the People's Republic of New York by putting sanctions and restrictions. And I think this is going to be a common theme in New York. And as I said, we're seeing little by little, right? Put your house at 78 degrees. We're going to tax. We're going to have certain tax implications. So I just think this is going to be more common in New York, and I think it's going to be next to, if you ride, who knows, maybe if you're riding during certain hours, you have to be on bicycle. And that's what I see what's going to happen in New York. I just think there's going to be more draconian laws, draconian rules to just destroy the everyday life in New York. Like you were saying earlier, John, about being a New Yorker. And I always thought that was like a thing of pride. So I was talking to somebody yesterday about New York. I said, man, growing up, it was rough and tumble, but there was still community. There was still community and families. And you had that walk. It was like sense of confidence and cockiness and arrogance. That's that New York walk. But what is a New Yorker today, man? I don't know. It's going to be someone that puts their house at 78 degrees, only has one house, only has one car. The car is hybrid. They can only drive in a car during certain hours. They can only go to certain stores. That's what New York is. And that's what I think a New York is going to be.
Yeah, I look, I'm just looking like short-term effects on it. I'm like, for years and years and years, the People's Republic of New York was always coming down on the working man, like the working class New Yorker, targeting all their legislation. And I think what Mamdani's doing is like, no, we're coming for everybody. We're coming for everybody. So I think you're going to see a big effect on the luxury real estate market in New York City. I think you're going to see a lot of houses go up. And then I think you're going to see a lot of inventory sitting for a long time, things for sale, because I think people are going to think twice before they actually move to New York City now. They'll opt for other options. Like, hey, I'll stay right outside, or I'll go to Connecticut, or I'll go to Jersey City. They're going to start to opt people that have the option of doing that. And I just think it's a dumb move, honestly. I think the guy gets New York already crushes everybody in taxes. And I just think it shows as an experience. The other thing real quick is just this video. I clipped this out. And I honestly, the guy's so inexperienced. Like I said yesterday, I said 2026 is something that no one would have predicted. Everybody, the whole police force is going to quit if Mamdani's elected. And we're like, that's bullshit. That's not happening. You know what I mean? There's plenty of ballless, emasculated, self-neutered white chiefs who will gladly deep throat Zohran Mamdani, take it in the face, go home, kiss their wife and kids, and they're not leaving, and that didn't happen, right? There wasn't this mass exodus of people because Mamdani got elected. Never happened. But so what he did yesterday though is he showed that why 2026 is going to be the largest year numerically for NYPD overtime ever. Summertime is going to be the largest number ever. And now in September, UN General Assembly is coming. always a large amount of overtime gets deployed during that time. Resources are strained during that time always. Now, even when the NYPD wasn't in the state that it's in right now, which is it's a demoralized department, it's an understaffed department, and what he did is he added another burden onto his already overburdened, overworked police force that got crushed this year. And so that is going to be the largest period of overtime ever again. And you have no one to blame but the mayor of New York City, because he gets cornered by Marcia Kramer. I swear, I think she's the only reporter that actually asks any questions to this guy. She asks him, like, what do you think about, what are you going to tell your base, basically? You told your base you were going to lock up Benjamin Netanyahu. Now you're saying you can't. Like, what are you going to tell him? He's like, well, I'm going to tell him to go out there and protest. And obviously, it's America. You have the right to protest in this country. But as a responsible mayor who is already said he was going to bring down the budget of the NYPD, already said he was going to bring down the overtime budget of the NYPD, and what he did in 2026, he's going to make history. Most amount of NYPD overtime ever under the socialist mayor. Same exact shit that happened under Eric Adams. He was going to get rid of all these cops. He was going to bring the budget down. He was going to bring the overtime down. Nobody knew how to manage. And these guys made more money than they ever did. Well, guess what? Mamdani is going to fund the police more than even Eric Adams did. Two idiots that said they were going to get rid of cops, and two idiots that are unnecessarily putting a huge burdens on their police force, and now a huge burden on taxpayers. Listen to what Mamdani says here.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approach the Netanyahu issue from a different direction.
Please.
I wonder what you would say to your Palestinian supporters and others who voted for you because of your vow to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and are disappointed with the fact that you can't do it. Some of them have taken to social media saying, arrest him anyway because ICE doesn't ask for permission, that you should just do it. And also, the second part of the question is, what do you think that these people who are frustrated with Netanyahu should do when he arrives in New York City for the United Nations meeting?
I think one of the bedrocks of our city is protest. It is something that has been a part of what makes our city so special, that New Yorkers can express themselves, whether they are in support or in opposition, no matter on whatever topic. And I've always said that when we respect our Constitution, we also respect our First Amendment. And here in New York City, it'll always be a place where you can exercise that. And when it comes to the first question, I have made clear both that I believe that this is an arrest warrant that should be executed, and also that I would follow the laws that we had, and I would be respectful of those laws. And that is why I asked my administration to do a review of all applicable law. And I believe, however, in that same finding, that the United States government does have the ability to both joining the International Criminal Court and executing that warrant. And that is something that I want to see happen.
I just want to follow up. I wonder if two questions really. Can you tap into the disappointment that people in the Palestinian community feel that you're not going to be able to arrest them? And are you urging them to protest?
I'm simply saying that this is a city where if anyone feels a level of frustration or opposition, protest is something that we will always respect. I leave it to New Yorkers themselves to make that decision. And when it comes to Palestinian New Yorkers who are disappointed, I understand it, because we are talking about someone who has been charged with crimes against humanity, someone who has visited the city on many an occasion and who has been welcomed by previous mayors. And I want to make it very clear that that welcome ends with me. I will not be welcoming Benjamin Netanyahu or any other war criminals when they come to this city. And I do believe that our federal government should join the International Criminal Court and ensure that there is accountability when it comes to crimes against humanity.
What a good thing.
Yeah, guy's such an actor, That's such a political answer, But yeah, John is right. More overtime is on the way, and he just told you right there, I think he forgets that he's the mayor, and the cops have. If you're telling your guys to go protest, I mean, there's gonna have to be police details at that protest, right? Which means there's gonna have to be overtime paid out.
Well, I think the funny part about this is all the cops that we spoke to, that's all of us, like, when Zohran Mamdani comes, everybody's leaving, I'm leaving. And they're like, at least with Eric Adams, we were making money. Well, now you're going to make more money with Zohran Mamdani. So get yourself a T-shirt that says, I love Mamdani, NYPD, because that's what's coming. So for all you guys that said you're leaving because of Mamdani's there, yeah, when that overtime check comes, man, you're going to be singing Mamdani like a canary. Mamdani, Mamdani, give me that money in my pocket. That's what you're going to be saying.
You know, before we do the super chats, just one last thing. Marlon always says that Mamdani's an actor. I want you guys to decide for yourself. Do you think Zohran Mamdani is an actor? This is a little clip this girl did. I thought it was really well.
Socialism.
This is Zohran Mamdani. He's running for mayor of New York and currently polling second. Here's what he normally sounds like.
We gather tonight in the wealthiest city, in the wealthiest country, in the history of the world.
But in an interview in South Africa, he sounded a little different.
I actually created a playlist for Mira, who also happens to be my mother. Nepotism and hard work goes a long way.
And in an interview with the Turkish-American podcast, Mamdani sounded different again.
I'll be honest with you, brother Masoom, is that at this point, not many people are thinking about it.
And here is Zohran during his rapper days.
You know, it would have been here earlier, but a worldwide tour is a worldwide tour is a worldwide tour. As in, you can't just stop it. You know.
I do a deep dive into Zohran Mamdani and his changing accents for the Free Press. Read it at the FP.
You're like two little
There you
kids.
go.
You're like two different kids. Oh, you got one accent when you're down in South End. You got another one with your rich uncle, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You're like two different people, aren't you?
Yeah, fucking scumbag.
Uh,
All right, that's good.
I'm gonna go watch the part again. It's fucking great. now every time I
we
watch
should
the
just
part,
clip
I'm
that
gonna
out.
think Mamdani. What?
Honestly, you know what we should do? Like get the clip of him talking like that, and then put it with put Wahlberg on there.
Oh,
And
that'd be great.
clip those together, right? You're like two different people, aren't you? You got one accent.
Yeah.
You're dropping your R's, right?
Yeah. When with your mommy and daddy, right?
Yeah. So funny, dude. So, all right, let's go. Anthony says, keep keeping us informed. Thank you, brother. Thanks for always being here.
Thank you, Anthony. Coffee downs, baby.
Pat Donahue. We want to get Pat Donahue on soon for a segment that Scott Monroe is going to love. The DEA segment where we're going to go through all the changes that are happening in the DEA. So, Pat, let us know when you're available. I'm sure Scott would love it. I know that retired and active DEA members will love it because they'll actually get some fucking answers that nobody will give them instead of getting blocked on social media and getting their comments pulled down, even in the retired detectives union, which is why I'm not a part of any retiree union other than the Finest Unfiltered, baby. So he says, podcast poll. What air fresh? Go fuck yourself, Pat. What air freshener did John have in the Infinity? 1, vanilla aroma. 2, black ice. 3, new car scent. 4, strawberry. 5, Crown Club cologne. Take the poll. I'll answer at the end.
I go with the Crown Club cologne.
Anthony says, new era cops nowadays can't be shamed / embarrassed and to be an active, proactive cops, to take pride in the uniform and cops who came before them. It's all training, bro. It's all training and standards. What the department allows is what'll happen, you know?
That's right, dude.
100% approval rate if you want a beard. 0.16% approval rate if you don't want to take a vaccine that you already have antibodies for, you know? No, we'd rather you be a bum cop, you know, and nobody got fired for putting a fake vaccine card in.
Wait,
so,
then why is everybody getting a vaccine then? Are they paranoid?
Yeah. Sick. Staten Guy says it's going to be a collar to follow by the law 2030. Integrity and decency will be outlaw. Oh, to follow the law by 2030. I mean, we're walking the thin line over here already. So. I don't care about Israel or Palestine. I care about here. I care about our safety that we don't have anymore. I don't want my mayor pretending people in jail are all angels and not people who made the city worse. Well, I say that all the time, you know. Yeah. I say it all the damn time. I think everybody is a phony. Everybody, again, I'm going to go back to the Democratic Party. I don't see a damn difference between them and the socialists. The only difference is one faction of the Democratic Party, the traditional Democrats, support Israel, and the socialist radical wing of the Democrats support Palestine. And honestly, I don't give a shit because I'm like, what are they doing for working class people? Absolutely nothing. They're aligned on every single failure when it comes to public safety, when it comes to DEI, when it comes to being fiscally irresponsible, when it comes to covering up corruption, when it comes to targeting majority groups and discriminating against groups that they consider to be the majority. I think they're exactly aligned. I see no difference with them. And so, yeah, I don't care either way. I'm talking, people often hit me up about, you should, you're this with Netanyahu, you're blowing Netanyahu. I'm like, I'm not blowing. I could care less what happens overseas. It has nothing to do with me. I don't know about it. I've never been to these countries. I can't competently speak on it. I'm talking about what's happening here. Your politicians are lying to you, and you guys are arguing about what's happening in a country you've never been to that you really don't know, and you got all your talking points from the fucking news media. Like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah. Well, even if you care about what's happening overseas, I mean, he's not the mayor of Jerusalem. He's not the mayor of Tel Aviv. Okay, he's the mayor of New York City, and he should be concerned with what affects the lives of people who live in New York City.
Yeah, I would like to report this. Ask him, say, well, if you're now looking to ICC warrants, how are you going to be very busy if you're looking for every ICC warrant in this entire globe? I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. It just shows. As a mayor, do you pick and choose the politicians you like or you don't like? It's absolutely ridiculous. And he even said it. First of all, he knows he can't do it. It's the dumbest thing. He even said that he feels the U.S. should join the ICC. Yeah, no shit. So you have no say in this. It's absolutely the stupidest thing. So you pick and choose what politicians you like and don't like, and then you persuade people to protest because you don't like this politician? That's not what a mayor does. And you're right, Marlon. Does he even know he's the mayor? Like, do they have to remind, like, hey, buddy, Act 2, ready? Take action. You're the mayor today. That's what they used to tell him. So he's a man of many faces. Well, one face he doesn't have is he's not the mayor. Who the fuck is he? I don't know.
Yeah, no, totally. It's it's stupid, dude. It's totally, and that's my thing. It's like, what do we focus on overseas for when the guy's lying to your face, right? And you don't want to hold him accountable, It's that's the stuff that bothers me. So this mayor claims to not like cops, but he calls on them to do more than any other mayor in recent memory. Every day has to be a party for perps. I don't necessarily agree that he calls on them more. I think that every mayor, look, the last 3 mayors have ran on that they hate the NYPD. Basically, their whole campaign was that they were gonna stop NYPD over time. They were going to clean up the corruption. They were going to staff things properly, and they were going to give you a better public safety product. But it was really anti-NYPD. So we've had that for now. We're going on. I mean, we're on our 13th year of this, but we've had that. And what you saw from de Blasio, from Adams, and now what you see from Zohran Mamdani is the #1 agency that is relied on by mayors across. Doesn't matter if you doesn't matter if you wanted to defund the police or you didn't, because we had 3 defund the police mayors, and what they do, they all rode the NYPD's coattails forever. Yep. And once Adams realized that he's a moron, he has to go away from it, started wearing his NYPD hat and talk about all the times he was wearing a bulletproof vest instead of all the times he was hiding in the broom closet in transit, making out with his boyfriends, I think Nin was in the broom closet with him a couple of times. Nin, they were probably chopping up that Guardian money.
Where was that closet?
Yeah.
I just want to know, Nin.
In a white neighborhood.
I want to know, Nin, who went first? Huh? Who went first, Nin?
They took turns. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we got? Crime is underreported. Anything about Israel is overreported. It's pretty obvious they don't actually care about the citizens and lives of New Yorkers. Legacy media, that's what it is. If you follow the legacy media, you're uninformed. That's it. End the story. If you're reading the Post, the Daily News, listening to Fox, listening to Newsmax, listening to CNN, listening to MSNBC, and you think you know what's going on, you have no idea what's going on. I'm sorry. Like, you have none. I mean, I listen to these people. Like, I listen to their experts. I've been an expert a couple of times myself. more than a few. And I would say, yeah, no, I don't think that they're experts. You know, with the whole Guthrie thing, I kept getting phone calls and I'm like, look, I'm not coming on. I don't know anything about it. I was like, as a matter of fact, literally, I mean, not everybody, but the overwhelming majority of NYPD guys that you've had on there and other major departments across the country, they sound like idiots. Get guys from Arizona to talk about that case. Like, you know what I mean? Get guys that were investigated, or at least guys that investigated missings and homicides. Like, have them come on. Like, I there's nothing that I could add there. I'm not coming on to sound like an idiot. But that's what they want. They want people, you know, yeah, you know what they should do. It's like, yeah, fuck out of here. Or bring a chief on that was just part of the most corrupt mayoral administration ever, who failed on every front in public safety, who more cops retired, resigned, or resigned early on and have him tell you how to fix all the problems within the NYPD in New York City. You know, that's probably good information. The Finest 25, he says, present for duty. Thanks for another solid week of shows. Appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys for being here with us. And yeah, anything else before we run out of here, fellas?
Thank you, Diecast. Listen, awesome show as always. 2 hours and 45 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate friends and listeners. Awesome show. I love Friday roundtables. Yeah, listen, stay in the know. Thank you for for us sticking together and growing. 315,000. Let's keep going. Let's get that. Let's get to our next goal is 500,000. So with our friends and listeners, we can do it. We appreciate it. Thanks for the laughs, Mom.
Yeah, I was just looking for the I'm trying to find the fundraiser for Mikey Fried. So let me see if I could pull this up. Yeah. So if you guys can just lend a little support to Mikey Fried. He's a good friend of all the shows on the network, and his mom is going through some hardship right now. So I'm gonna post the GoFundMe link in the chat, and maybe I'll put it in the description later for this episode. But if you guys can, just lend your support to him. So
yeah.
But
I think Mike Fried, like, we don't give him any credit, but I think he built the Finest Unfiltered like chat room that we have on Facebook. Because like I put it out there because he got all these retiree chats and the moderators are like left-wing Nazis. Like, you can't talk about anything on there, so they take down all the stuff. So I just put a chat up like the Finest Unfiltered. Moderate yourselves. I don't care what you say. It has nothing to do with any of us. You know what I mean? Be accountable for your own words. Like, you're all grown adults. And Fried, like, he's constantly in it and pushed it. And I think we got like 2,500 people in there, something like that. And it's busy. You go in there, there's post after post after post after. I was like, wow. And I just looked at it. I never look at it because I'm not a moderator. I don't care. I'm not going to moderate. It's America. It's free speech. Be accountable for your own words. Like, why shouldn't you be able to discuss what the hell you want to discuss? And so yeah, shout out to Mike Fried, because if you're on that, if you're in that Finest Unfiltered chat room on Facebook, it's really Mike Fried that made that happen. Yeah,
Marlon, I'm glad you put that up. Sorry, I actually forgot to even speak about that, but we're praying for your mother, and God bless you, brother. He really is a good friend to the podcast. He really is support us in many ways, so we want to support you, and keep strong together. This is very touching, Mike. So you need any help, man, please tell us how we can help you.
Pat, you are correct, my friend. That was a good guess. New call center. Yeah, but Mike's a good dude, and he is like a quasi producer. He's always texting me like everything that's going on. So appreciate you, Mike. I hope all's well with your mom.
Yeah, he does.
Help anyone out.
He definitely keeps us in the know. We appreciate it. I say it all the time, honestly. Before we jump off here to the chat, anyone watching right now, we really appreciate you watching and engaging. But really special thank you to the chat, because you keep the conversation going. And sometimes there's points we may miss, and you guys bring it up and keep that conversation on all wheels. So thank you very much.
Yeah, guys. So we appreciate you joining us this morning. And if you're on patrol out there this weekend, stay alert, stay safe, and you're not EOT until you get home. Okay.
That's right. NYPD, bring back anti-crime. Too gay.
Not with this mayor, that's for sure.
Zohran.
All right, peoples. We'll be back on you Monday. If you didn't check out Executive Perspective, make sure you go back, rewatch that episode. We'll be dropping stuff over the weekend. And yeah, you guys see anything, you hear anything, you want us to talk about anything, drop a comment. You guys don't like us, we got plenty of those comments. We appreciate it. And yeah, wherever you're watching, listening, do us a favor, like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, give us a review. Appreciate you guys. Finest Unfiltered, baby. We'll be back at you on Monday.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?